Good afternoon. Good afternoon. We're bringing today's education and economic development budget hearing to order. We're going to begin with the Department of Commerce. We'll first hear from our budget analyst, Elizabeth Weibel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The fiscal 2027 allowance for the Department of Commerce totals $283 million, which is a $20.5 million decrease from the fiscal 2026 working appropriation. The chart on the first page of the analysis shows that there was some lower spending in the 2025 actuals. That's due to special funds and several programs that were underutilized. There's some discussion of the larger of these funds on pages 4 and 5 of the analysis. There are various reasons for underutilization. But DLS has asked Commerce to comment on why these programs were underused and what is being done to ensure appropriated funding is reaching the intended recipients. On page 6, there's an update on fiscal 2026. Last year's budget bill included a provision restricting $250,000 from the Child Care Capital Loan Fund for MHBE to conduct a survey and outreach to child care workers. That was attached to the special fund appropriation. However, it is not an allowable use of the special fund. So DLS recommends adopting a BRFA provision, making that an allowable use for fiscal 2026 only. The budget bill also includes proposed deficiencies of about $800,000 and a fund swap and more jobs for Marylanders to reduce general fund spending and utilize a special fund balance. On page 7 is an overview of the fiscal 2027 allowance. The business development category receives $83 million. This includes the Cannabis Business Assistance Fund, Build Our Future grant program, Industry 4.0, as well as some pass-through funding from Medco. DLS has 2 recommendations here, which are shown on page 8. One is in the Build Our Future grant program, which provides funds for infrastructure and workforce development in eligible technology sectors. DLS recommends reducing funding from $7 million to $3.5 million due to the state's budget constraints and the similarity to some other state economic development programs. The Strategic Infrastructure Revolving Loan Fund in Medco provides loans for real estate and infrastructure projects with a focus on underutilized properties. This program is still in development and has not started using its fiscal 2026 funds, so DLS recommends reducing funding from $10 million to $5 million. The Industry 4.0 program is level funded at $2 million, which is above the mandated $1 million. We didn't make a specific recommendation to reduce that, in part because we were already recommending a reduction in Build Our Future, which has a similar mission, but I did want to mention that. The financial assistance category receives $64 million and tax credits receive $44 million. These programs include the Small Minority and Women-Owned Business Account, or SMWOBA, as well as a number of tax credits, the Child Care Capital Fund, Revolving Loan Fund, and Ms. BITFA and MEDAF. DLS recommends reducing funding for the Biotechnology Incentive Investment Tax Credit from $12 million to $10 million. That's due to lower utilization. In recent years, awards have been averaging about $6 million annually. Turning to arts funding, the Maryland State Arts Council receives $32 million, of which $28 million is for grants. There is a funding formula in statute that requires general funds for the Maryland State Arts Council to increase each year by the percentage that general fund revenues are projected to increase. Due to the state's structural deficit, we looked at some of these long-term funding mandates, and we are recommending a BRFA provision to require level funding rather than increasing funding for MSAC each year. DLS also recommends reducing the fiscal 2027 general funds to level with the fiscal 2026 working appropriation. MSAC also receives a $1 million annual distribution from the state admissions and amusement tax, and DLS recommends a BRFA provision eliminating that distribution and redirecting revenue to the general fund. Page 10 shows the proposed budget change. Most programs are level funded. There's a $2.5 million grant to Medco to support a company called Prieto Battery that is moving to Maryland. There's also an increase in grant funding to the Maryland Tech Council for BioHub Maryland from $500,000 to $2 million. And DLS recommends reducing that to $500,000 level with fiscal 2026 funding. There was also a data entry error that resulted in Ms. BIDPA management fees being included twice in the budget, so DLS is recommending deleted the unneeded amount. There was also a $10 million decrease due to the end of mandated funding for the Western Maryland Economic Future Investment Program. The mandated funding for the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra also ended, but that is partially offset by a $500,000 planned bridge grant for the organization. Turning to the issues on page 14. More jobs for Marylanders. It provides tax credits for businesses that create and maintain qualified jobs. Enrollment in the program has closed, but the costs are still really difficult to project. There's a cap on the first year benefits, but no cap on the amount of tax credits that companies can receive in later years. Companies, depending on when they enrolled, can be eligible for 5 to 10 years of credits, but there's no deadline for when the companies need to file with Commerce to claim the benefits. So if you look at Exhibit 3, those are the maximum projections for how many tax credits may be claimed under the program. Under these projections, the tax credits will be well over $100 million by 2030. And then on Exhibit 4 shows kind of the projected versus the actual tax credits that have been awarded. So you see it's lower than those projections, but still increasing. So there is a lot of uncertainty around how much this program will cost and how long the state will be paying for it. So DLS recommends a BRFA provision that would cap the annual value of tax credits that may be awarded at $15 million, and then require that the available funding be prorated among the companies. DLS also recommends establishing a sunset date in 2037 to give companies a deadline to apply and provide some additional predictability. There's an update on the Sunny Day Fund beginning on page 16. The allowance includes $16 million in general funds for the Sunny Day Fund, which is level with fiscal 2026. Plans for the 2026 funding have not yet been announced, but Commerce reports that it is working with several companies that it intends to request funding for, and is also in discussions with companies for proposed 2027 funding. DLS recommends deleting the 2027 funding due to the state's fiscal condition, and since plans for 2026 funding have not yet been finalized. There's some history of the program on page 17, including how it's been used in the past. The Legislative Policy Committee must approve uses of the fund. However, there's a provision in the Decade Act that would require LPC notification rather than approval and allow Commerce to determine how those awards are made. There's an update on the film production tax credit on page 18. DLS conducted an evaluation of this tax credit over the interim that recommended terminating the program, and DLS is proposing a BRFA provision to sunset the tax credit. You can see the DLS recommendations on pages 21 through 22, and I can take any questions you have.
Are there any questions for our analysts? I actually do have one quick question. In relation to the film production activity tax credit and the DLS recommendation, to eliminate it, were we comparing this tax credit's productivity to other neighboring states in that analysis?
I would have to look back at the analysis. It's been a while since I
No problem.
but I can.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none? All right, Secretary Coker and team, please come up front. And please feel free to introduce your team.
Good afternoon, Chair Smith, Vice Chair Wollick, and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. For the record, I am Maryland Commerce Secretary Harry Coker, and I am testifying in support of the Commerce Department's proposed fiscal 2027 budget. I'm joined at the table by Deputy Secretary Ricardo Ben, Deputy Secretary Steve Rice, Acting Managing Director Marcy Ross, and Executive Director Stephen Scarrett Davis. And just behind us, Managing Director Jen Lahat, who amongst all this group can help address any questions that you all may have. First off, and just as importantly, I do want to thank Elizabeth Weibel and the DLS team for their always thoughtful review and analysis of our budget. It's value added and we appreciate it. I'll keep my testimony fairly brief, but I do want to begin by just acknowledging the importance of economic development that we're undertaking, because it is ultimately about creating the conditions for Marylanders in every region of our state to prosper. When our economy grows, it strengthens the foundation that allows our government to deliver the services that our residents expect and deserve. Strong schools, safe communities, modern infrastructure, and opportunity for the next generation. But economic growth does not simply happen. It requires intentional strategy, sustained partnership, and investment. Our competitor states are investing aggressively to attract industries, to grow their workforce, and position themselves for the future. We do intend for Maryland to compete, and that is why we are equally clear-eyed about the importance of strategic economic investment. Put simply, economies that invest in growth grow. Economies that hesitate watch opportunity go elsewhere. The Department of Commerce is focused on ensuring that Maryland is positioned to compete, building on the strategic sectors that will define the coming decade, while continuing to support the small businesses, manufacturers, tourism operators, and cultural institutions that power our local economies. Tourism and the arts are a particularly important part of that story. Tourism benefits communities from the Eastern Shore to Western Maryland and throughout the Baltimore-Washington corridor to the north and south. And the arts are simply not cultural assets, they are economic assets. Maryland's creative sector supports jobs, drives tourism and local spending, and contributes meaningfully to the vitality and wellness of our communities. When people choose where to live, where to visit, and where to invest, they are choosing more than an economy. They are choosing a place. And Maryland's culture, history, arts, and natural beauty are central to that choice. The FY 2027 Commerce budget reflects this balanced approach, investing in growth, supporting our communities, and ensuring that Maryland remains competitive in a rapidly evolving national and global economy. And with that context, I look forward to walking through our budget with you all. Our balanced approach has yielded numerous economic development wins over the past year, including NatureCell, which is establishing a new stem cell research facility bringing 500 jobs to Baltimore City. Avail Enclosure Systems, which announced in March it is expanding from Queen Anne's County into Kent County and a plan to create 45 new jobs. Governor Moore's Capital of Quantum initiative has already attracted more than $500 million in major quantum investments, including bringing new DARPA and Microsoft facilities to the Discovery District in College Park. And we saw a landmark announcement from AstraZeneca, which is investing $2 billion to expand its manufacturing operations in Frederick and Montgomery counties. Just in January, we announced Sphere was bringing a new 6,000-seat music and entertainment venue to National Harbor, and the projected annual economic impact of that project is $1.5 billion, and it will also create thousands of construction and permanent jobs. Now, these are just a few examples, and there are more to come. Commerce does have a robust pipeline of business attraction, business expansion, and foreign direct investment opportunities with the potential to yield billions of dollars in capital investment and thousands of jobs. We are also attracting more private investment to Maryland's business community, including our innovative high-growth lighthouse sectors. And this really is a multiplier effect of growth in those key sectors that can produce growth across our economy and attract major new investment. These sectors will help us protect funding for education, public safety, public health, housing, and more. And as we face another budget gap this legislative session, it really is more important than ever that we maintain and increase our economic development momentum. Commerce's legislative priorities this session focus on sharpening the tools in Maryland's economic development toolbox, enhancing programs at Commerce and at other departments and agencies to make them more focused and more effective. Our proposed FY27 operating budget allowance totals $267.2 million, and that does include $130.4 million in general funds, $125.6 million in special funds, and $11.1 million in federal funds. Our proposed budget includes $17.5 million for Advantage Maryland, or MEDAF, which is our primary direct assistance program. It also includes $12 million to fund the Biotechnology Investment Incentive Tax Credit, or BITSI, a high-demand program supporting investment in one of Maryland's most important industry sectors. $7 million for Build Our Future Innovation Infrastructure Program, excuse me, which provides matching grants to stimulate growth in key technology sectors. $2 million for the Manufacturing 4.0 Grant Program, which provides matching funds for small and mid-sized manufacturers to invest in advanced technology. $2.2 million for the Child Care Capital Support Revolving Loan Fund, which brings the total amount available to that program to $10 million. $32 million for income tax credit reserve funds for the More Jobs for Marylanders incentive program. It also includes funds for some of our most important small business assistance programs, including $14.2 million for Miss BIDSFA and over $20 million for the Small Minority and Women-Owned Business Accounts, SMWOBA. The budget also includes $18.9 million for tourism development and $30.5 million for the Maryland State Arts Council. There's also $16 million to recapitalize the state's Sunny Day Fund, which enables Maryland and our strategic economic growth by attracting major businesses and creating jobs and investments. And I'd like to turn now to the DLS recommendations. We have included our full written responses within our testimony. I'll just note that while we concur with two recommendations regarding a sunset date for More Jobs for Marylanders tax credit program, as well as the deletion of the duplicated funding that was included in error, we respectfully disagree on several recommendations, and we'll talk to those. Each of the proposed cuts would hinder Commerce's ability to attract new investment to the state, spur job creation, and to strengthen and grow our economy. The first DLS recommendation, Commerce was asked to comment on utilization of several programs, and our detailed response has been included in our testimony. Second, regarding the Child Care Capital Support Revolving Loan Fund, DLS recommends adopting a BRFA provision authorizing an outreach campaign and survey as an allowable use from the special fund in fiscal 2026. Commerce respectfully disagrees. The outreach campaign and survey have already been completed. There was no request for Commerce to transfer funds to support this effort. Therefore, we do not feel a BRFA provision is necessary and would prefer not to alter the statute. Third, DLS recommends reducing funds for the Build Our Future grant program from $7 million to $3.5 million, citing the state's budget situation and asserting that this program is similar to other state programs. Again, Commerce respectfully disagrees. This program is specifically designed to boost investment in 12 important technology fields that are aligned with the state's strategic emphasis on our lighthouse sectors: quantum, computational biology, and position navigation and timing. The matching grants through this program are used to defray costs of eligible innovation infrastructure projects. The program requires businesses and higher education institutions to invest at least twice the amount of the state grant, or 4 times the state grant for larger projects. This really is about leveraging investment, and any reduction to the appropriation for this program represents losses in additional investment by the potential grantees. Build Our Future has been extremely popular and consistently receives applications totaling well beyond the grant funding available. The grant funds are often the final dollars that these companies need to be able to fund their projects. So a reduction in appropriation means projects that will not be completed and private investment and spending in Maryland's economy that will be lost. Fourth, DLS recommends reducing funds for the Strategic Infrastructure Revolving Loan Fund from $10 million to $5 million, stating that the program has not yet launched or started encumbering its fiscal 2026 appropriation. Commerce respectfully disagrees. This is a program still in development in fiscal 2026, and while funds have not yet been awarded, MEDCO has term sheets and proposals in progress that would account for the full FY 2026 appropriation. Both MEDCO and Commerce are in active discussions with projects that would use the additional $10 million proposed for fiscal 2027. Fifth, DLS recommends reducing the appropriation for the Biotechnology Investment Incentive Tax Credit, or BITC, by $2 million due to low program utilization. Commerce respectfully disagrees. While utilization of the BITC program has been lower than projected, the program remains oversubscribed at the initial application stage. Commerce recommends maintaining the current appropriation of $12 million, as demand for the program has consistently been beyond $12 million when application reviews begin. Additionally, Commerce has been coordinating with DBM through the budget development process each year to ensure that minimal general funds are utilized to maintain the reserve fund balance. This will again be the case if fiscal 2027 utilization falls short. 6, DLS recommends reducing the general fund appropriation for the Maryland State Arts Council to $29.3 million, level with the fiscal 2026 working appropriation. DLS also suggests a BRFA provision requiring a level rather than an increased general fund allowance each year. Commerce respectfully disagrees. Public investment in the arts grows the state economy by creating jobs, generating local and visitor spending, and maintaining a quality of life that supports business attraction and retention. Companies choose Maryland as a place to invest and grow, in part because of our historically strong arts sector, which offers a wide range of cultural opportunities for professionals and their families. The arts also support positive health outcomes for youth, older adults, veterans, and vulnerable populations. And while the department appreciates the state's fiscal condition, a reduction in funding to MSAC today will result in a reduction to the department's ability to attract and retain businesses and to ensure that no Marylander is left behind. 7th, DLS recommends eliminating the $1 million admissions and amusement tax distribution and redirecting the revenue to the general fund. Commerce respectfully disagrees. Legislation passed in 2016 formalizes the transfer of these funds to the Maryland State's Arts Council. As resources have tightened, this revenue has bolstered MSAC's ability to provide stabilizing operating support through its largest program, grants for our organizations. Removing the tax distribution at this stage would result in a potential decrease of at least 5% per grant, thereby widening the funding gap and creating a ripple effect that destabilizes arts jobs and organizations and compromises an important selling point for businesses looking to call Maryland home. Next, DLS recommends reducing the BioHub Maryland funding to its fiscal 2026 level due to the state's fiscal situation. Commerce respectfully disagrees. BioHub Maryland helps Marylanders of all backgrounds pursue rewarding careers in life sciences by offering biopharma manufacturing skills training, career resources, and access to hundreds of job openings across the state. A strong biomanufacturing workforce is the greatest need identified by Maryland's life sciences industry. And BioHub Maryland opened its biopharmaceutical workforce training center in Rockville in fall of 2024. Additionally, the final FY 2026 allowance was itself a reduction from the $2 million initially proposed by the governor that year. An additional reduction this year will once again result in a shortfall of funding necessary for BioHub to be successful. This continued funding will ensure the success of the center by providing specialized training and education, thereby supporting economic development and enhancing Maryland's competitiveness in the global market. Next, DLS recommends adopting a BRFA provision to cap the annual value of the final More Jobs for Marylanders tax credit certificates that may be awarded at $15 million and require that available funding be prorated among qualified companies. Commerce respectfully disagrees. Such a cap would result in a significant retraction of previously committed incentive funding offered to companies that choose to locate and expand here in Maryland. Companies relied on these commitments made via Commerce to influence their location and expansion decisions. Commerce is concerned that these companies and others will no longer trust the commitments made by our state and choose not to consider Maryland for future growth and expansion due to a perceived lack of credibility. In order to provide certainty as to a final termination of the program benefits, Commerce concurs with the sunset date of 30 June 2037. This will allow the department to communicate to all businesses that are enrolled in the program of the upcoming date and ensure businesses have the opportunity to claim a full 10 years of benefit before it is terminated. Next, DLS recommends the fiscal 2027 allowance for the Sunny Day Fund, in part because plans for fiscal 2026 have not been finalized. For fiscal 2026, Commerce has 3 major projects with active Sunny Day applications in advanced stages of development. Commerce expects to completely exhaust the funds in this account. Eliminating FY27 Sunny Day funding will jeopardize 1 existing and 1 new project representing $3.3 billion in total capital expenditures and 4,272 total new jobs. Furthermore, eliminating Sunny Day for FY27 would send a strong negative signal to the business community that Maryland is not interested in supporting very large projects that could have an outsized impact on the state's economy. Our neighboring states have similar programs, which means that Sunny Day Fund is critical to trying to level the playing field within the region. Finally, DLS recommends sunsetting the film production activity tax credit at the end of FY 2026. Commerce respectfully and emphatically disagrees. This would effectively end large-scale production in the state and dismantle an industry built over decades. This is not a subsidy without a return. The tax credit pays for itself, sustains thousands of Maryland jobs, and keeps the state competitive in a global marketplace. Our written testimony goes into detail about the 7 major productions that received tax credits between fiscal 2019 and fiscal 2025. These supported jobs for 892 Marylanders, spent more than $56 million directly in our state, and generated over $95 million in total economic impact per project, and produced $6.53 in direct spending for every $1 in credit issued. We must stress these are not Hollywood jobs. These are Marylanders, carpenters, electricians, drivers, hotel workers, caterers, and small business owners. Without the tax credits, these jobs that spend and that spending would not occur here. Chair Smith, Vice Chair Volek, and members of the committee, thank you again for the opportunity to present the budget and for your continued partnership in strengthening Maryland's economy. Economic growth is not simply a priority for the Department of Commerce. It is the mechanism that enables Maryland to deliver for its people. A strong economy generates the revenue that supports education, public safety, health care, transportation, and the many services that Maryland families depend on every day. But economic vitality is about more than numbers. It is also about the character and the energy of our communities. Tourism brings visitors from around the country and the world to experience Maryland's landscapes, heritage, and hospitality. The arts enrich our communities, strengthen our sense of identity and pride, and contribute profoundly to individual wellness and quality of life. These sectors help define Maryland not only as a place to do business, but as a place where people want to live, work, raise families, and build their futures. Economic development is ultimately about stewardship, ensuring that Maryland remains competitive, vibrant, and full of opportunity for the generations that follow us. The FY27 Commerce budget is designed to support that mission. We sincerely appreciate the partnership of the committee and the General Assembly, and we respectfully request that you approve Commerce's fiscal 2027 budget as submitted. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Are there any questions for Secretary Coker? Vice Chair Wolek.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Lovely to see you, Secretary Coker. Thanks for your team for being here. I wanted to also, before I get into my questions, just thank you for your partnership. I have a bill on SMWOBA this session. I see Ms. Lahat sitting in the back, who's been just lovely to work with to get more activity in that program. And I did want to actually segue into the existing programs that you have. The first question, one of them that the analyst pointed to, was about underutilization. And I wanted to just get a sense, looking at a couple programs. I mentioned SMWOBA as one that I was working on this session. There's MJM, and I'm going to mess up these acronyms. There's something, MEDAF, is that how you call that?
MEDAF?
Yes. Is that how you say that? Okay.
MEDAF.
MEDAF.
Also Advantage Maryland.
Okay. Can you just talk a little bit first about MJM and just the use of that program? It was mentioned that it's highly dependent on whether or not businesses are actually coming in and asking for the tax credits. My question is specifically around marketing, not only for the MJM program, but others. From my interaction with my constituents, the feedback that I've gotten is that people are unaware of all these amazing programs that exist within commerce. And in these fiscal times that we are in, it's obviously challenging to create new things, but we have fantastic programs, but people are just either don't know about them or not taking advantage. So just wanted to raise that to you to see specifically for the MEDAF and the MGM, if you can speak a little bit to those.
Thank you for the question. With respect to MEDAF and MJM, just looking at MEDAF specifically, we do our level best to make sure that we advertise and share the resources that Commerce has with companies around the state. We do that through various means. We have our recruiting team. We have our regional team, which is based in different regions across the state, and their specific job is to engage with local chambers, local economic development organizations, and local businesses. And they are really on the front line of making sure that the local business communities are well aware of the opportunities that Commerce has. With respect to more jobs for Marylanders, this is a critical tool because when it comes to business recruitment, this is one of the things that helps to essentially bring companies into the state. And so, because we use it as an incentive tool to bring companies into the state, and there are companies that could apply for and take full advantage of it that haven't done so yet, we don't want to create a situation where there may be a perceived bait and switch. So, that's, I think the state of play with respect to the programs.
If I may follow up. You mentioned there are staff that Commerce has that's working with chambers to connect with Marylanders so that they're aware of the programs. How many people are doing that, and what's the sort of the dollar amount that you've allocated to FTE that's specifically doing that outreach on the ground? And if you don't have that, if you don't mind sending it after this.
Sure, we can get that to you. We have 10 folks on our regional team that move about the state and have specific jurisdictions. And I also would like to note with regard to MEDAF, we are fully deployed, at least as far as projects are concerned, with the MEDAF account. We should fully exhaust the funds that have been allocated for that.
Thank you.
Delegate Tolles?
I'm still formulating my question. Go ahead, please. Thank you.
Hello, Secretary Coker. Thank you for your testimony and thank you for your team being here. And also congratulations on some of those recent wins that you highlighted in your testimony. I want to follow up on one of her questions, and I have several of my own. So in terms of the 10 folk that are doing some of that outreach, what are their benchmarks for engagement? How do you assess their productivity and their impact? Because there does seem to be a disconnect. There's underutilization of programs. So whatever is happening seems to be insufficient. How do we measure the value of their work?
So we have, of course, metrics that we have that we're, benchmarked against on an annual basis. But this is really a partnership. And so it's not just the 10 folks on our regional team who are moving about the state who are primarily focused on business retention and expansion, but it's also our regional team and the various offices we have, throughout the Department of Commerce. But we partner with, as I was saying, local economic development organizations, local chambers of commerce, and we utilize them to help amplify the messaging. Of course, we have our marketing and communications teams. We're constantly meeting with businesses, doing site visits. The secretary has a very robust statewide tour, and we're touching each and every county and each and every community across the state. So we have a lot of mechanisms in different ways that we try to push out the messaging. And but we to your original question, yes, we do have annual metrics. I don't have those in front of me, but we have benchmarks.
And ma'am, I would like to add that within the Department of Commerce, we have 30 incentive programs, loans, grants, tax credits. And we are in the midst right now of doing a return on investment assessment of each of those 30 programs. We're more than halfway through, but our intent with that ROI is to see how we can get better. Some of those that may not be meeting their objective, we'll come back to you all and talk about adjusting them or sunsetting them. But we are holding ourselves accountable with that ROI assessment.
And I'm really pleased to hear that because quite frankly, when I visit the website, it could be more dynamic, right? So we're competing with states, right? I mean, people love for me to go there, but I'm going to go there. Virginia is very proactive. They are calling our businesses here. They're reaching out to them. And so some people are saying, well, I don't even hear from my own state, but I'm hearing from other states that are trying to get to me. And so I think that Maryland sometimes doesn't understand what they're up against. And some of what you need to incentivize people isn't simply money. It's a whole culture of feeling catered to. I know that Medco testified recently about the private partnership kind of, 3P center they're trying to develop around the work that they're already doing. But I wanted to know your involvement in that type of work because it feels like Maryland isn't known to be quite on the offense at the same rate that some of our neighboring competitor states are. And I hate to drill down on this point, but all the money in the world won't make up for people not feeling catered to. So I want you to drill down on that.
And yes, ma'am. And just, I think it was Friday, Deputy Secretary Rice hosted a company from the West Coast at our headquarters in Baltimore. And I was talking about the perception that some folks have of the business environment here in Maryland. That company said, but hold it, we've seen, and they rattled down those 4 recent successes. So they said, we know you're doing it right, and that's why we're here. Despite, pardon me, some of the noise that's out there, they just looked at our recent successes and said they wanted to come here and talk to us about things. And we're making progress. But, man, we do not take for light the competitive landscape, and I am in lockstep with you on it's more than monetary incentives. Our partners at the Department of Environment have made significant progress, and that counts for a lot. Our partners at the Department of Planning are also making significant progress. members of the Governor's Economic Competitiveness Subcabinet, GECS, which is essentially every department and agency in the state government that touches on economic development. We meet monthly, and we talk about that, the business environment and how we can do better on every front.
Well, I have some more specific questions. Are you really ready, Delegate Tolles? I don't want to hog it if you have your thoughts together. Go ahead. Okay, no problem. So on number 3, when you were discussing that you were not in agreement with the reduction to the Strategic Infrastructure Revolving Loan Fund from 10 to 5 million, as you may know, that was my bill that established that fund in the first place. And so you said that you have been in talks to use this money to the full 10 million. I wanted to know kind of the maturity of those conversations because, I mean, business development is about a lot of talking, but all talking is not the same quality of talking. So could you, to the ability that is appropriate, share how robust or how mature those talks are to really use the full 10 million?
So I'd love to circle back if we could with some more maybe detailed information after connecting with Medco, if that's possible. Okay, thank you.
Delegate Tolles.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you for being here. Could you, I want to kind of have some focus on the film tax credits. Could you talk about our neighboring states, or we're not even neighboring states, talk about what other states are doing in this industry, and how is Maryland, how competitive or not competitive is Maryland when it comes to this industry?
Candidly, this is an arms race. And so there are states such as, of course, New York and California that have traditionally been the epicenter of film production. But the state of Georgia and Atlanta has been extremely aggressive, as I think many of us know, in recent years. New Mexico has also been extremely aggressive. States are providing very robust tax incentives, more than Maryland, but they are also, in the case of New Mexico, as I understand it, they're also building studios and financing studios so that they're reducing the operational costs for film production for companies that are looking to produce. So what we're doing, we're currently in the process of selecting a film director. We're also leaning in, and our team is very aggressive when it comes to recruitment. And I think to a certain extent you can see that, but we're going to become extremely aggressive when it comes to film production recruitment as well. And so we've done some reorganizing and reshuffling internally. We would like to have some additional flexibility. We would like to, of course, fully fund the request, but we're going to become extremely aggressive when it comes to making sure that the folks in the industry know the value proposition that Maryland brings when it comes to film production and I'll say the unique advantages that we have here that other states don't have. If we can proliferate those and make them more aware, even with a less robust film tax credit program, we think that we can increase the level of production in the state and support the thousands of people who rely on it.
And I'm sorry, Madam, a couple follow-ups, and I didn't get your name because I'm not sure. If you said it, I apologize, I missed it, your name.
Stephen Rice.
Rice, okay. And could you touch on the other jurisdictions that have benefited from Maryland? Which jurisdictions have greatly benefited from this film tax credit? I know some work in Prince George's, there may be some work in Baltimore and Western Maryland. Could you talk about, which jurisdictions have benefited from film projects in the state?
So as I understand it, the jurisdictions across the state have benefited. And I say it, but some more so than others, candidly, of course. But I say that because when it comes to siting of locations, the uniqueness that Maryland has is that you can film almost any period and any type of movie within the state, because we really are America in miniature. So to that end, different jurisdictions across the state have been attractive for filming because of the environments, because of the architecture,
And
because
could you
of the
be more
communities.
specific?
Well, I know Baltimore City has greatly benefited. I know Howard County has benefited. I also know that Prince George's County has benefited.
Do you know the exact, and I'm sorry to cut you off, I want you to, because folks are listening, and I think it's a good thing, so I would like for you to expand on some of the work that has happened in Baltimore City. Because
Sure.
we need to get past the wire. They've done more than wire, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So
And House of Cards.
Baltimore City and Hartford County, Baltimore City and Hartford County, House of Cards. Baltimore City and Howard County, Veep. Those are probably, two of the better well-known, but we've also, and I have to think through, there's a very popular show, Lioness, that with Zoe Saldana, that was also filmed in different parts of the state. So, this program and the entire state has benefited from production, and we would like to see that continue and expand.
Okay.
Just one
and-
more. We gotta spread the wealth. Just one more.
Oh, I'm sorry, one more. Madam Chair, I thought I was saving my time and just getting it all out. I'm sorry. And thank you for the grace. And that is my first budget hearing with you all. And so if you could just, well, I would say this. Is it true that this film tax credit and bringing films to the state of Maryland has been a priority of Governor Moore's agenda?
Yes.
Okay, so I just wanted to indicate that since he's been here, I know that's been something he and I have talked about. So I'm in support of what you are trying to do in the state, and so I'll just stop there and may come back if Madam Chair will allow me.
You will allow other bites. We will allow
Thank you.
other bites, but Delegate Forbes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Secretary, for being here and for your team and the work you do every day. I appreciate the presentation. I'd like to talk about the arts funding and the DLS recommendation to flat fund it going forward. I've always felt that part of the brilliance of this formula was that it increases because costs increase for everyone. And so you would be able to use it. Can you talk about the way that you've used the funding in the past, whether you have things that haven't been funded, you have oversubscribed to things, and whether there's been any money left on the table in past years? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Delegate. Stephen Scarrett-Davis, Executive Director of the Maryland State Arts Council. To the leaving money on the table, we don't leave money on the table. We are oversubscribed in all of our programs. There's great demand for the types of programs that the Maryland State Arts Council offers, ranging from general operating support for organizations, project support for arts programs, including community projects and public art, to work in the schools, supporting teaching artists to work in schools and community settings. We had 3,761 applications last year. We were only able to fund 1,119 of those. So we're oversubscribed. But the brilliance of the 1994 Arts Stabilization Act was that, and I think it's worked as intended, it's ensured stable funding for the Arts Council. I think it signals that the arts are important in Maryland, and it ensures that support for the arts and arts organizations is growing at pace with the state. We invest every dollar that we can back into the organizations. It allows the organizations to know that there's funding there, that it allows them to do long-range planning, hiring. That all results in economic impact that the Secretary talked about. I think it also inspires private investment, knowing that the state is there supporting the arts. For the artists, I also think that it similarly shows that the state has an interest in the arts and is there to support the arts. It inspires relocation. I know that nationally we do have a reputation of treating artists well here in the state of Maryland and having programs that offer that cater to them. And that's a big selling point, as the Secretary mentioned, in spurring economic development. Yeah, did you have any, did that fully answer your question?
That did, thank you. And I just appreciate the work you do. I don't go to an event or a show or an art exhibit. Last weekend I was at Silver Arboretum at a lunar celebration, Lunar New Year celebration, and the MSAC logo was on their signage too. So you really are investing all over the state, and we appreciate it.
Thank you, Delegate.
Thank you. Vice Chair Wolek.
So much for that answer. It was really helpful. 3,000 versus 1,000, so there's a great need, and I appreciate learning that. I wanted to actually go back to the question that was raised by the chair about benchmarks in terms of outreach for our existing programs. And you'd mentioned that there's an annual report. First, I would request if you might be able to share that with us. And then secondly, I would, humbly suggest that waiting a whole year to kind of doing this on an annual basis. Maybe you are already doing it on a quarterly basis, but it would be helpful to understand sort of how that outreach is happening on a more real-time basis and how effective it is, whether or not you're able to reach businesses and the chambers and your stakeholders. So getting more timely information would be helpful. I wanted to shift a little bit to a headline that I saw yesterday that was very troubling with the federal government. It looks like there is a new rule or incoming potentially about the SBA now disqualifying immigrants from owning or receiving SBA loans. I'm not sure if you saw that. If not, I just want to put that on your radar. Our state, we are a welcoming state. One of the things that we pride ourselves in is that anyone can come here and be successful, including immigrants. And so the SBA loan is just a fantastic program nationally. And if an immigrant, whether it is somebody with a green card or some other legal document, you are now unable to have ownership in a business that is receiving SBA loans, that's going to be really problematic. So I wanted to just put that on your radar, and if there's an opportunity to address that from your department, that would be fantastic. And if not, I'd love to have a conversation offline to see if there's a legislative fix we need to do to be able to provide capital for our immigrants who want to start businesses here as well.
I missed the article yesterday, but I'll catch up on that and we will follow up.
Thank you.
Ma'am, I just would like to provide a little bit of information. Last year, our team had 4,209 direct outreaches to Maryland businesses and resolved 1,679 issues for Maryland businesses. I just wanted to share that.
Thanks so much. Having that by program would be really beneficial. So the MEDAF and all the acronyms. Thank you.
Delegate Tolles.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just two other follow-up questions, and then we could set up a time to talk in more detail. With all the unfortunate changes happening at the, let me get this name correct, John F. Kennedy Center, it is an opportunity for Maryland to bring, being a neighbor, to bring some of those performances here in Maryland. I know you've already started to do that. And so could you talk about that? And then could you, basically based off, what's happening and with the film and the arts, is there a way to simplify the process, the programming, so it can be easier for filmmakers to get those funds? I think it's an opportunity with what's changing in DC and administration to capitalize that on in Maryland. I think one helpful way would be for filmmakers to capitalize, to get those funds in a more simplified way.
Do you want to do JFK?
To speak to the art part of that, I was quoted in the banner earlier this week, just reiterating that Maryland is a open and welcoming place for artists. As the vice chair said, we're a welcoming state, and we welcome all of that arts activity here. We know that it's good for us. It's good for Marylanders. It's good for our economic development. It's good for everything. We do have the oversubscription issue at the State Arts Council. The organizations that have applied to our Grants for Organizations program have increased 44% over the past 6 years, since 2020. From 212 organizations, we now support 306 arts organizations through that program. That's a substantial part of our budget, and is not growing. The general funds are not keeping pace. So if there are more arts organizations, if there are more projects coming our way, we would welcome the opportunity to fund those with more resources. To the film part, would you like to speak to that?
But just to piggyback on that, is there a way to simplify that process?
To simplify that process, we have worked over thank you for following up. We've worked over the past 6-7 years to simplify all of our processes, to reduce barriers. We have a new entry point called the Creativity Grant. That's a very simple application. It generates a lot of activity. A lot of the numbers that I mentioned are Creativity Grant applicants. We've also recently revised our Grants for Organizations program so that the application is much more simplified, and we've reduced barriers in that regard.
Okay, great. Yeah, reducing barriers would be really helpful. And then,
So I can't speak to the tax credit, though. That's in a different office.
But I'll just join you on the need to simplify the process. We have received feedback from some of our private sector partners on the need to simplify the process. And we have to strike the right balance. We still need to do our due diligence before we have loans and grants and the like, but we realize and we're taking a look at ways to improve, to simplify that process.
okay, thank you. And I would just say thank you for your comments, and I want to thank you for your work with Prince George's County too, with this sphere. I can't get it out, with this sphere. So I want to thank you for that. This will help generate more artists and benefit the state overall. So I want to thank you for that partnership.
You're welcome, ma'am. And Prince George's County stepped up. We are grateful for that partnership. They stepped up.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Vice Chair Wolek?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I'll just say I have so many questions because I'm really passionate about this space. So I'll preface my question with that. The chair had talked about the business climate and sort of catering to our business leaders in the state. I was wondering if there is anything in place currently in the department that is sort of customer focused in a sense, in a way to understand and get feedback from our business community in terms of what they find helpful in your engagement, and also which programs are helpful. Is there some sort of way to solicit that feedback and even share it either with us or with the public?
Yes, ma'am. A number of venues. One, the Governor's Office of Business Advancement. That's designed really to provide concierge services to businesses that are having difficulties on permitting front, zoning front, invoice. That's what that office, GOBA, is all about. Our lead for that office has been to every jurisdiction in the state, making sure that those entities are aware of that GOBA service. And it's an opportunity for businesses to say, hey, XYZ hasn't been working with us on a permitting issue. And GOBA goes back to that other state department or agencies to start the dialogue, but then to end it with action that the private sector partner is looking for. So that's one. The second one is also related to county tours. The Department of Commerce, in addition to our regional reps, I've been visiting have 2 more counties to go in the state, but we go to those counties and we have typically a round table with invited elected officials, members of the chamber, and economic development representatives, as well as local businesses. And it's their opportunity to tell us where we need to improve. That's direct feedback to me, typically. And we're doing that on a continuous basis, not just the first year here. The other aspect of that, I mentioned the monthly Governor's Economic Competitiveness Subcabinet, where every department and agency that touches on economic development attends that monthly. We're also inviting those counties to get in front of that body to talk about the challenges that they're experiencing in this very diverse state, and have an audience with the secretaries that can directly address those concerns. So we get to hear it firsthand, and our partners in the counties in Baltimore City get to tell us face to face, frankly, where we're coming up short. That's what we ask for, what we need to do better. And I'll tell you, at our most recent Governor's Economic Competitiveness Subcabinet, we had one of our rural counties come up to us and talk about the need to focus on rural economic development as well. We knew it beforehand, but we got it firsthand from that representative, and we're going to take that on in earnest.
What are the top 3 things that have come out of those conversations?
Some have been a request to look at regionalization of policies. An example was livable wage. It differs across the state. Can the state take a look at that? That's one. Another one that is consistent is energy. How can we make it and ensure that it stays affordable? And speaking of affordability, housing is there. So regionalization of statutes or regulation, energy, and housing, those are 3 of the top issues that are pretty consistent as we go across the state.
Thank you.
Delegate Forbes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you again. I would like to talk about the Child Care Capital Support Revolving Loan Fund. It was, when we passed it in 2022, we knew it was necessary to support our child care providers, and it has been incredibly popular, and you're doing the work to do it. As I understand it, as people pay it back, the money goes back into the fund to be available for other people to borrow. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay. And there are, in the analysis we received, that 40 of those loans that have been made are delinquent by more than 4 months. What happens to those child care providers who aren't paying the funds back? Like, what happens to their loans? And what's the term of the loans? What's the average amount of the loans and the term of them?
5-year term per statute. And, you know, actually, Jen, did you want to come up here? Yeah.
That's the hat. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. In terms of the loans that are in collections issues, Steve's team, the finance team, works with those childcare providers to, we're not sending them directly to collections. We will, when we hear from a childcare provider that they are going to have difficulty repaying their loan, we work with them on putting them on a payment plan, restructuring the loan in a way that we can, again, work with them so that we are not immediately sending these providers to collections for a default on this loan. I think we in the department anticipated that there would be some defaults on these loans just due to the nature of the types of businesses that we're working with. So especially in the case of home care providers, we're not going to come after someone's house because they did not repay these loans. But we work with the providers, see if we can get them on a different restructured payment plan to repay the loan and work through it that way.
Thank you. And do you have an average amount of the loans that have been given out?
I would have to get back to you on that and take a look at the data for the program, and we can provide that information for sure.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I do want to highlight that one of the co-chairs of our newly installed rural caucus is among us. That is Delegate Jeff Grice. So just for your situational awareness, I want the Secretary to know that there's a member of this subcommittee. And then also, as you make your visits, think of this subcommittee when you're in our counties and jurisdictions, because we do have an outsized responsibility around economic matters. I wanted to turn our attention to the Sunny Day Fund, because we've seen that it's been used sparingly and really most robustly about a decade ago. And so I know that you were saying that there are some discussions where maybe there's an anticipated use of these funds, but it really does seem like something that has not really been used all that much despite being in the budget for, so I wanted to hear more about your rationale.
Just to, I guess maybe provide some additional clarity. We have been very aggressive when it comes to business recruitment and business expansion, and we expect to fully utilize the FY26 Sunny Day funds. We have a number of projects in the queue, and we are anticipating the need for Sunny Day in future years, for sure. So if there was any way to increase the funds for Sunny Day, I think we would be really happy. But we have a lot of projects that we're working on. We have projects in various stages of finalization. We need Sunny Day. And let me be just brutally clear here. There are commitments that we have made as a state when it comes to supporting projects for business recruitment and business expansion, business retention. And we fully expect to utilize Sunny Day to fulfill those commitments.
I'm glad to hear it. I mean, really, the proof is going to be in the pudding. It's barely been used. So if what you're saying is true, then in the next fiscal year, it will bear that out. So I look forward to seeing a much more robust pie chart, because it's not really, hasn't barely been used. I also wanted to turn our attention to what she mentioned around childcare. There's an aspect of childcare with the revolving loan fund you mentioned, but how does childcare feature or factor into your recruitment conversations? I know that, for example, they're building a brand new Lego plant in Virginia, and one of the first new Lego facilities in North America in some time, and the childcare landscape was a part of what attracted them to that opportunity. I believe in North Carolina, the childcare work itself is housed in the Department of Commerce. There's a nexus between childcare and economic development. It's really, they call it economic infrastructure in other states. Here, it's something that advocates talk about as a nice to do for children, but I don't really hear our business community discuss childcare accessibility, affordability as a key feature in what makes us an attractive state to do business. And I want to know, are those conversations you're having internally in Commerce? And if so, how can we be supportive?
Well, it doesn't typically come up when we're, doing recruiting trips or when we're in discussions with companies to relocate or to expand. But we do know, based upon data and also anecdotal conversation, that it is critically important. There is a much greater need for child care facilities than there is a current available options. And so if we're going to continue to grow, it's something that we have to invest in and support, or else we will be holding ourselves back.
Thank you for that, because we will be passing a child care package very shortly, probably next week, where we see emphasis in not only supporting affordability for consumers, but increasing the supply side so that we can meet that demand. But I definitely think it's a missed opportunity if other states are having a really highly developed conversation and recruitment message and pitch that talks about not just housing, but also child care, because child care and transportation are two of the impediments to a worker being reliable. If no one's watching their kid and if they can't get to you, they're not a great worker. And I feel like we might be missing opportunities to thread the needle across some of those concerns in our economic conversation.
I'm sorry, we can surely work that in.
Yeah, I'd love to see more on that front. That's all for me, but Vice Chair Wolek.
Yeah, final question for me as well. Thank you, Madam Chair. You'd mentioned, Secretary, that the three things you'd heard about in these conversations were regionalization, housing, and energy. And I wonder, in terms of from a customer service perspective and how businesses are engaging with the department, what are those issues? Not necessarily policy issues, but sort of customer orientation. What are the challenges that businesses are finding when they're interacting with the department?
A fair amount of issues have been with permitting and zoning. And that's where our team, the Governor's Office of Business Advancement, connects those businesses with, in this case, MDP and MDE. And oftentimes it's just being able to make the connection and then they work through it. A lot of times folks don't know who to reach out to, but GOBA is the right person in commerce that makes those connections.
Just for clarity, GOBA, is that a new office of this governor?
It's yes,
Okay.
yes it is. It's just over a year old.
Okay, just wanted, for
Yes,
everyone's
appreciate it.
global
And
awareness.
on that, we do have quarterly metrics that are available. We can get those for you.
Thank you. I know we have a lot of witnesses that want to weigh in on your budget. Are there any other questions for this panel? Seeing none, thank you for your time. We're going to be calling up the next set of witnesses. Just a moment. Okay, can we hear from Nicholas Cohen, Ken Matt Martin? Is Stevie Walker Webb also still here? No? Okay. Is Ruby Lopez Harper here? Oh, there you are. Perfect. And is Tiffany Zapula here? Space for you. You can begin.
Thanks.
And
Chair,
just want to advise 2 minutes.
Chair Smith, Vice Chair Wolek, honorable members of the committee. My name is Nicholas Cohen. I serve as Executive Director of Maryland Citizens for the Arts, the statewide organization advocating for public investment in the arts. I want to thank the governor, his administration, and the General Assembly for their continued leadership and support of Maryland's arts sector. Each year, the Maryland State Arts Council supports thousands of artists and organizations and helps ensure that arts funding reaches every corner of the state. We know that the arts sector is not ancillary to the state's economic vitality. It is a meaningful driver of economic activity, workforce participation, and tourism across Maryland. With respect to the DLS recommendations, we urge the committee to reject these proposals given their long-term implications and the harm they would cause to Maryland's arts sector. Reducing the State Arts Council's funding below the governor's proposal, leveling the statutory growth formula, or eliminating the dedicated admissions and amusement tax distribution would not simply adjust a line item. It would alter the structural framework that has guided Maryland's arts investment for decades. The Art Stabilization Act was intentionally designed to provide predictable, formula-driven funding that grows in alignment with states' revenues. Weakening this structure risks destabilizing organizations and artists who rely on that predictability to plan programs, hire staff, secure matching funds, and serve communities across rural, suburban, and urban communities in Maryland. The proposed reduction represents a very small portion of the state overall's budget, yet it would have an outsized impact on a sector already facing reduced federal and philanthropic support. We all know the state's investment in the arts generates significant economic return. The State Arts Council ensures these funds are distributed transparently, reaching communities in every legislative district. With that said, we respectfully urge the committee to support the governor's proposed budget for the State Arts Council and reject the DLS recommendations. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. There you go.
Honorable members of the committee, I bring greetings from Baltimore Center Stage. My name is Kim Matt Martin. I serve as producing director there alongside my co-leader, Stevie Walker-Webb, who serves as artistic director. And as the leaders of Center Stage, Stevie and I are very proud to say that we work hard every day to foster joy, service, and connection for Marylanders by producing world premiere plays that here in the recent years have attracted Emmy, Grammy, Tony, and Oscar winners here to the state to be able to premiere those plays in Baltimore and then have gone on to have future lives on Broadway and off Broadway. And that's in addition to the other education programs we have, like our juvenile justice program, where we're working to reduce recidivism through the arts within juvenile detention centers, as well as our free student matinee series and our Young Playwrights Festival, which is the oldest festival and program in the country that provides free theater arts programming for young people who otherwise would likely not have arts within the schools. Each year, of course, MSAC provides grants to thousands of artists and arts organizations just like Baltimore Center Stage. And obviously, the state support is very crucial, but only actually accounts for about 6% of the total revenue that we have. And that other 94% is independently raised thereof. However, as those resources that are happening independently begin to dwindle, continued and increased support from the state is especially crucial. BCS, along with all of those other organizations, are also obviously a serious economic driver. The arts generate in total about $13.7 billion in economic activity in the state and also account for almost 86,000 jobs as well. And that's before you even include our independent contractors in terms of the various other artists that we're also employing. It is crucial and imperative to that end that we ask that the committee fully fund the Maryland State Arts Council's mandated arts appropriation of $31.8 million this year. And we'd like to say a very special thank you to the governor, the First Lady, this assembly, Madam Chair, as well, for your continued support of the arts, and we hope that you continue doing so.
Honorable members of the committee, my name is Ruby Lopez Harper. I'm a resident of Wheaton, Maryland, a suburb of Silver Spring. Forgive me, I'm recovering from a cold. I serve as chair of the Maryland State Arts Council and as executive director of the Craft Emergency Relief Fund, and I'm a national arts advocate. I come before you today as a local constituent, a statewide leader, and someone who works across the country in support of the arts. The Maryland State Arts Council supports a statewide network of more than 300 arts organizations, 24 local arts councils, 29 arts and entertainment districts, and thousands of independent artists across Maryland. Together, this sector generates 86,000 jobs and $13.7 billion in economic activity, including $7.3 billion in wages and compensation for Maryland workers. The arts are not a luxury item in Maryland's budget. They are a workforce sector. They are small businesses. They are employers. They are community anchors. State investment in the arts serves as a powerful lever. On average, as you heard, only about 6% of an arts organization's revenue comes from the state. While 94% is raised independently, that state support signals credibility, unlocks private giving, and makes it possible for organizations to generate the remaining 94% on their own. From what I'm seeing across the country, states that maintain consistent arts funding during periods of federal uncertainty and economic volatility protect not only cultural vitality, but economic stability. Consistency from the state is not symbolic. It is foundational. It signals reliability. It preserves jobs. It ensures that organizations can continue serving Maryland residents without interruption. If this funding is reduced, the impact will be immediate and local. If you implement the DLS proposals, the impact will be long-term, disastrous, and lethal. Community-based enrichment programs that serve older adults and caregivers, combating isolation and supporting well-being will be gone. After-school arts programs that provide safe, supervised, creative spaces for young people will disappear. And rural and small-town organizations that are already operating lean will be forced to cut staff, reduce programming, and close their doors.
Please close. Can you please close?
Yes, thank you. To that end, we respectfully ask the committee to fully fund the Maryland State Arts Council at the mandated FY25 level and to reject any reductions to its budget or adjustments to its mandate. Thank you for your continued support.
Good afternoon, Chair Smith and distinguished members of the committee. Oh, sure. Yeah, got it. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Tiffany Zapula, and I'm a 3-time Emmy-nominated set decorator. As a native Marylander, I began my career here in Maryland in the film industry, and I have chosen to remain in Maryland for the past 25 years working in the film industry. I'm here today to respectfully urge you to maintain and fully fund the Maryland Film Office and its programs within the Department of Commerce, including not sunsetting the Maryland Film Production Activity Tax Credit. I know your time is valuable, but I would like to focus my testimony on 3 key points. First, economic impact. This program does not ask Maryland to take a risk. It delivers immediate local spending while building long-term economic development. Every production delivers tangible, measurable, and proven return on investment. With consistent funding, the program means money for a broad cross-section of Marylanders rather than exporting those dollars to competing states. Second, jobs and constituents. Behind every production are Maryland workers, local businesses, and families whose livelihoods depend on this industry. Maryland's emerging film market is supported by strong statewide higher education degrees and curriculum in secondary schools such as Baltimore School for the Arts. These programs prepare students for careers in film. If there is a consistent, robust program, they establish and grow their careers without leaving the state. Maintaining and consistently funding this program means investing in Maryland's workforce today and tomorrow. Third, forward-looking growth. Maryland already has the workforce, the vendors, the infrastructure, and the infrastructure needed for a thriving film industry. By fully funding this program and not sunsetting it, it will build a sustainable economy rather than constantly rebuilding it or watching opportunities and residents leave for other states. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much collectively for your advocacy, your artistic contributions and excellence. And we do have a question from Delegate Tolles.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And I echo the sentiments of the chair. Thank you so much for being here and letting your voices be heard. And the woman who just spoke, what is your name? Delegate Grice was talking to me.
That's okay.
No, I'm kidding. He's the one that told me. I know, I was kidding. I'm kidding. He's the one that said, she's talking your wheelhouse, and I didn't get your name because I was doing something else.
Tiffany Zapula.
Tiffany, and you're with, who are you with?
Actually, I am here representing, just supporting the Maryland Film Office and through the Maryland Film Coalition.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, because I was going to ask a question about sunset, but I didn't want to overdo it because I thought that, the point was made about how important film was to the state. Could you talk about first, I agree with you that the sunset, that we don't need the sunset because it's really beneficial. And I'm glad you brought up, beneficial to have arts expand as much as we can and afford to be able to do in the state. But I did want to talk about schools, and so I'm glad you brought that up. Could you talk about what happens if children do not have, if programs are eliminated in our schools, and what have the arts done for children in high school or middle school? What benefit has that brought to our community?
Understood. Thank you for the question. I am not an educator, so just to be clear in that regard, but knowing that during COVID, actually, I had the opportunity to teach a remote production design class to the Baltimore School for the Arts in their film program. Mm-hmm. So it was clear how excited and interested these students are in pursuing that level of education. And with, as I said, in terms of our collegiate opportunities across the state, there is a lot of opportunity here for these students to stay within Maryland and really pursue a career in film and have opportunity. But conversely, without a fully funded, consistent program, those opportunities aren't here, and they would have to go and seek work elsewhere. And that is one of the key components to keeping, as I said, maintaining and consistently funding this program. You have this incredible feeder school system from the Baltimore School for the Arts into the university programs. And people get established, young people get established and they have friends here. They want to stay in the community. And it's a very strong way to continue the growth of the film industry. We already have an incredibly talented crew base here, so these new students or newcomers into the industry will have an incredible opportunity to learn and grow. And but like I said, the goal is to keep Marylanders working here in Maryland.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Seeing no other questions for this panel, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you. Calling up next, Michael Mason, Ruth Toomey, Kelly Schultz, is Matt Libber here? Oh, there you go. That's enough space.
Okay. Hi, good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Smith and the committee for hearing us today. My name is Ruth Toomey. I am the Executive Director of the Maryland Tourism Coalition. We are the trade association that represents all sectors of the tourism industry across the state. I am here today to respectfully urge you to maintain the proposed budget for the Maryland Tourism Development Board and to strongly consider restoring funding to the FY25 levels. Tourism is not a discretionary expense, it's an economic development engine, as our industry is unseen, unheard, and often overlooked. Tourism is one of Maryland's largest private employers, nearly supporting 200,000 jobs across all 24 jurisdictions. These are accessible jobs, positions that do not require a 4-year degree, that provide opportunity for young professionals, career changes, and individuals re-entering the workforce. Tourism creates pathways to advancement and stability. In 2024, Maryland welcomed 45.8 million visitors who spent $21.2 billion, with a B, in our state. That activity generated more than $1.4 billion in state and local taxes, funding education, public safety, infrastructure, and essential services. Tourism helps pay for the priorities of this General Assembly without raising taxes on Maryland residents. In your packet, you would have received our little investment sheet that shows you where the money goes. And the return on investment is undeniable. For every $1 spent in marketing in Maryland, $69 returns to the general fund. Few budget lines can demonstrate that kind of measurable fiscal impact. Yet Maryland is significantly outspent by neighboring states that invest 2, 3, even 4 times in tourism marketing. When we underinvest, we are not just saving money, we are sending visitors dollars across state lines. I ask you to consider your own districts, your restaurants, your hotels, your attractions, waterfronts and main streets that depend on visitor traffic. Are we giving them the tools that they need to compete? The Maryland Tourism Coalition is simple. Tourism works for Maryland. When we invest in tourism, we invest in jobs, revenue, and economic vitality statewide. So please see us, please hear us, and please pay attention. I respectfully ask you to support maintaining, if not restoring, the critical funding. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Smith. For the record, Mike Mason here on behalf of the Maryland Association of Destination Marketing Organizations. I'd like to recognize the ones that are here right now. If they could all raise their hand that are sitting here. I think they are all here from pretty much everybody's district that's sitting around the horseshoe right now. And I ask each of you, if you don't have a relationship with them, have not met with them, please do that. It's vitally important. You heard Ruth from MTC talk about it. I mean, it's a $21 billion market here in the state. We save every household almost $1,100 a year in state taxes. These folks that are sitting behind me, they're the ones that are on the ground in our communities, in our districts, working either alongside our economic development offices. Some of them are government offices. Some are 501c6s that are private partnerships with boards that we have, but they collectively work together for the region to compete for the state and their entire region that we have. We work on large things that are coming down the line here internationally with FIFA, that coming here to, to the country as well too, and just things that we really need to focus on and grow it. In an ideal world, we wouldn't be kind of in the last in the geographically investment, but we do the best we can with what we have here in the state, and we're always advocating for more to try and invest into the state and really grow the tourism industry as well here. So appreciate you all fully funding it again this year, and want to stay on it, and hope to see you all in the summertime during a lot of great events. So thank you.
Madam Chair, thank you for having me. My name is Matt Libber. I'm the Executive Director of the Maryland Soccerplex in Montgomery County. I'm also the Legislative Chair for MTC with Ruth. I guess the challenge here is not to just say thank you for not cutting us this year, but I actually want to say that you should invest more in us. So the budget we have this year is actually representing a cut that we took last year. And to something that Delegate Forbes said, the Arts Council, they have an escalator in their funding every year based on the state's budget. Do you know what the last time the tourism budget was changed? 2008. That's when our budget was set. So if you look at the inflation rates, we're basically getting 40 cents on the dollar. So we're drastically underfunded just in general. But then when you look at our neighboring states, even Delaware spends more than us. I basically changed my testimony based on your questions, so bear with me a little bit. Did some back of the napkin math for you. On a per capita basis, Maryland spends $1.81 on tourism. Delaware spends $5.54, Virginia $4.20, Pennsylvania $2.35, DC $64, and here's the one that's really going to get you. West Virginia, $12.08 per person. Yeah. So we are losing to every one of our neighbors. And now we're seeing the predatory practices of our neighbors because they know we're down in funding. So they're coming after our market. If you go to Ocean City, you'll see a banner for every other state telling our customers to go there. If you watch TV, we were talking about this recently. I saw an ad for Visit Rhode Island on the TV here. So we're competing not just our region, across the entire Mid-Atlantic and Northeast. So we're at a disadvantage right now. We need to get the funding back because we're not an expense line, we are an investment. So the more money we spend, the more money we bring back in the state, and we can close that projected shortfall, I've learned not to say deficit, projected shortfall that we're looking at without putting the burden on our tax base. So we ask you to not only just restore where we were, but go beyond that and give us more money so we can bring you more money back. Thank you for your time.
Madam Chair, it's great to be here. Thank you to you and your subcommittee. For the record, my name is Kelly Schultz, and I'm the CEO of the Maryland Tech Council. It appears the other MTC on this panel, the Maryland Tourism Coalition and the Maryland Tech Council. We say ditto what he said for BioHub, but it is good, and I do want to thank, first I should say, Governor Hogan and the Lieutenant Governor for putting in the money in his budget for our program, BioHub Maryland, which is run by the Maryland Tech Council, and it is a wonderful training program. The governor this morning at the Board of Public Works just gave shout outs to BioHub and what we're able to do, not only for workforce development, but as it impacts economic development as well. And I will also say thank you to Secretary Coker, who really very much more than adequately explained the economic development value of having a resource like BioHub Maryland to be competitive with those other states that we always talk about, and to be able to really keep Maryland as the third largest biopharmaceutical manufacturing state in the country. And obviously those other two that are ahead of us, we're going to give it a run for our money, but other states are investing much, much more, similar to what other witnesses have testified. In Virginia alone, this last year, they recently invested $104 million into biotech. North Carolina saw $10 billion of life science investments last year. Maryland needs to remain competitive, and the biggest asset that we have in this state by far is our workforce, and we have to be able to continue to train the workforce at the need level that the industry is looking for them. I know the DLS report, the budget analysts submitted a cut for what the governor has suggested. We are here to say that we need to have uninterrupted service to the BioHub program so that we can continue to train hundreds of workers every year in order to go into this business that, as the governor stated, is critical to Maryland's future as a lighthouse industry. Thank you.
Y'all are right on the money. Are there any questions for this panel? I do have one question for you, Ms. Schultz. I know that there's tremendous activity with the BioHub, with Montgomery County and Frederick getting, those big investments come in. Can you speak to maybe some other things that the BioHub Maryland are accomplishing across the state? Because people, I think, readily associate you with Montgomery County.
Sure.
No,
that's a great question, so thank you, Madam Chair, for asking. Oh, is there, talk louder. How's that? Okay. Our training center is in Montgomery County. I'm very grateful to the county executive and the county council in Montgomery County for helping us with some funding for space in order for us to be there. But we are a statewide entity, a statewide organization. A couple of examples, we have a partnership with Bowie State University. So their bio program at Bowie State doesn't have the level of equipment and the hands-on experience that we have. So during the summer months, they bring their undergraduate students and some of their graduate students into Montgomery County so that we can train them there. Also, Hood College in Frederick County, able to work with them and some of their folks. But we were the workforce development option for the Baltimore Tech Hub application that went through the EDA, through the Greater Baltimore Committee. And so we're still working with them, even though there was not funding from the federal government. But we tend to expand statewide in those areas as we expand. And one of the reasons for this operational request is to be able to bring on an additional trainer so that we can expand into other areas across the state and to train more students with the capacity of a larger training staff. So thank you very much. I appreciate that.
No, thank you. Seeing no other questions, thank you to this panel and thank you for your advocacy today. Is Michelle Ferrone here, or is that not necessary? Because I guess Kelly took care of that. Is Amy Rohrer? Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else for commerce that I did not call? It's all about you.
I've never been up here by myself. Good afternoon, Chair Wells, members of the committee. My name is Amy Rohrer. I am here on behalf of the Maryland Hotel Lodging Association in support of your continued investment in tourism marketing and promotion in Maryland. Last year was a challenging year for hotels across the country. National performance was essentially flat. But here in Maryland, our hotels underperformed both national and regional benchmarks. You have my written testimony showing those numbers. In 2025, Maryland hotels experienced negative RevPAR growth of 1.9% year over year. RevPAR, revenue per available room, is the industry's most important benchmark. It's how we measure whether we are gaining or losing ground against our competitors. That 1.9% decline translates into real economic consequences, nearly $86 million in lost room revenue. It's more than $5 million in unrealized state sales tax and over $200 million in lost guest spending statewide, along with the tax revenue tied to those dollars. Maryland hotels are not reaching their full potential. We're losing market share to competing states that continue to invest aggressively in tourism promotion, as Matt spoke about earlier in his testimony. The return on tourism marketing investment is clear. For every $1 Maryland invests in tourism marketing, it generates approximately $55 in hotel bookings alone. And hotels are just one segment of the broader tourism economy, which supports 194,000 jobs across our state. Increasing Maryland's share of the travel market will generate additional revenue strengthen state and local tax collections, and support jobs in every region of Maryland. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you for your advocacy for closing us out. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you for your time. And that also concludes the budget hearing for Commerce Department. We'll move on now. Are we going to read this later? Okay, Maryland Department of Labor, Budget Analyst Connor Brown. Yeah, but I'm saying. Oh, you have. Oh, never mind. Okay, no. Okay. I do too. I do, but they put us kind of later. Yeah. I just want to make sure we're all here. Yeah. Like if she leaves, it's getting close. Holding it down. Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. My name is Connor Brown, Policy Analyst with the Department of Legislative Services, here to present the Fiscal 27 Budget Analysis for the Department of Labor. To begin, on page 1 of the analysis, the Fiscal 2027 budget for labor decreases by $40.6 million, or 5.6%, to $678.5 million. Special funds increased by almost 20%, primarily due to the inclusion of $70 million from the Family and Medical Leave Insurance, or Family Fund, which is expected to be available when required contributions for family leave begin in January of 2027. All other funds decrease compared to the fiscal 26 working appropriation. On pages 2 and 3 are summaries of key observations and recommended actions, which will be discussed in more detail throughout the analysis. Starting at the bottom of page 5 and onto page 6, the performance analysis section begins with Exhibit 1, measuring occupational safety and health complaints investigated by labor. Since fiscal 2020, complaints investigated have seen a significant increase that has been attributed to a nationwide campaign encouraging workers to file complaints coming out of COVID-19, along with state-specific actions like an easier electronic filing method. In fiscal 2025, complaint inspections rose slightly to 227, just below fiscal 23's peak of 232. On page 7, Exhibit 2 details correctional education students served by programs including adult education, GED prep and testing, and English as a second language. Between fiscal 2024 and 2025, the total number of students served decreased by less than 1% to about 3,110 students. While most programs saw very little change, the number of students earning a high school diploma increased by 25% in fiscal 2025 to 339 students. The 2024 Joint Chairman's Report, or JCR, requested that labor work with the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, as well as the Maryland Higher Education Commission, to report on strategies to maximize the number of incarcerated individuals with jobs upon release. That report is discussed at the bottom of page 7 and on page 8. There was one finding pertaining to labor that was in the statewide review of budget closeout transactions for fiscal 2025. That was conducted by the Office of Legislative Audits. That finding was that labor could not provide documentation to support the propriety of accrued federal fund revenue entries totaling $63 million, or the subsequent recovery of a $61 million entry, which was an accumulation of deficits that went back to fiscal 2020. Additionally, labor could not document how it addressed a $67.6 million deficit at the end of fiscal 2024 that they had determined was not recoverable because it had exceeded available federal funding. MD Labor should comment on how much of the federal fund revenue accruals have been collected since the end of fiscal 25. Moving on to page 9 is a discussion of federal rescissions, of which there were 2 main actions that affected labor. The first is that the U.S. Department of Labor terminated unemployment insurance, or UI, modernization funding that had been provided through the American Rescue Plan Act, which is ARPA. This funding included about $23.5 million that had been awarded to MD Labor that was rescinded. The second is the Inflation Reduction Act funding that Labor had received preliminary approval for to modernize energy codes was canceled via executive order at the beginning of 2025. Although the award was never received, the fiscal 2026 budget did include almost $900,000 in anticipation of that award. Also on page 9, the legislature added $425,000 in general funds in fiscal 26 for labor, which the agency reports has been committed to grantees. One of those additions was $250,000 to provide a grant to Dwyer Workforce Development to support healthcare workforce training. The fiscal 2027 allowance ups that to $500,000 for the same purpose, and the Department of Legislative Services, or DLS, recommends reducing that amount by $250,000 to level fund the Dwyer Workforce Development Grant at the fiscal 2026 level. On page 10, the fiscal 2027 budget includes 3 proposed deficiencies for fiscal 2026. The first is to add $500,000 to fund the Prince George's County Reentry Employment Incentive Grant that was erroneously reverted at the fiscal 2025 closeout. The second proposed deficiency is a $360,000 reduction in general funds to the Public Safety Apprenticeship Program. That reduction is contingent on a provision in the Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act, or BRFA, that I'll get to shortly. Last is a $400,000 reduction for the Adult High School External Program due to a shortage of applicants. In fiscal 2025, actual spending for the program was reported at about $175,000, and this deficiency would bring the fiscal 26 budget down to $340,000. The fiscal 2027 allowance includes almost $740,000 for the program, which is level with the pre-deficiency fiscal 26 funding. DLS recommends reducing the fiscal 2027 allowance by $400,000 to level fund the Adult High School External Program at the post-deficiency fiscal 26 amount. On page 11, Exhibit 3 shows an overview of agency spending for fiscal 27. The largest portion of the budget is for the Division of Racing at 31%. That funding is really primarily from gaming revenue, and it's used for local impact aid, racetrack facility redevelopment, and horse racing purses. On pages 12 through 14, Exhibit 4 outlines line item changes in the fiscal 2027 allowance compared to fiscal 26. I mentioned the budget decreases by $40.6 million. The vast majority of that comes from the Division of Unemployment Insurance, primarily due to lower contract expenses, which are discussed in Issue 2. Contractual employee expenses increased by just over $1 million, primarily due to a net increase of 25 contractual positions. That increase is due to a shift of correctional education providers from contract agreements with community colleges to state contractual employees, and it leads to a $2 million decrease in correctional education contracts in the fiscal 27 allowance. Personnel expenses increased by almost $44 million compared to fiscal 2026. However, it should be noted that a portion of fiscal 2026 personnel expenses were actually budgeted in contracts to be allocated at a later date when special funds from a new special administrative expense fund for the Division of Unemployment Insurance were added. Labor estimates that the increase in personnel expenses between fiscal 26 and 27 is closer to about $35 million, and that's primarily due to a decrease in the turnover rate. The fiscal 2027 allowance also includes $2 million for Maryland Teaching Residents Artificial Intelligence Now, dubbed MD Train. It's a new initiative to provide AI training for workers whose jobs are undergoing changes due to AI. DLS recommends deleting the fiscal 2027 allowance for MD Train due to the fiscal condition of the state. On page 15 begins a discussion of provisions that are in the BRFA impacting labor. Overall, there are 4 provisions, 3 of which would reduce mandates, and the other of which is technical. Of the 3 mandate reductions, the first is for the Law Enforcement Cadet Apprenticeship Program, which provides grants to law enforcement agencies to help offset costs associated with hiring apprentices. This provision would reduce the mandated appropriation from $750,000 to $390,000 beginning in fiscal '26. The fiscal 2027 allowance includes a contingent reduction from that provision, and as mentioned, there's also a proposed fiscal 2026 deficiency contingent on it as well. The second proposed mandate reduction is for the Career Pathways for Healthcare Workers program, which provides matching grants to pay for training programs for healthcare workers. This provision would reduce the mandate from $500,000 to $350,000 starting in fiscal '27, and the fiscal 2027 allowance also includes a reduction contingent on that provision. The third proposed mandate reduction is for the Prince George's County Reentry Employment Incentive Program, which has a $500,000 mandate through fiscal 2028. This provision would reduce that to $350,000 per year for fiscal 2027 and 2028. And again, the fiscal '27 allowance also includes a contingent reduction from that provision. The technical correction I mentioned is related to a provision in the 2025 BRFA, which required the comptroller to distribute $37.3 million from the Local Income Tax Reserve Account, or LITRA, to Labor's Division of Paid Leave, with Labor repaying that within 2 years after family contributions began. However, Labor also received those funds as a general fund appropriation. This year's BRFA would amend the recipient of the LITRA transfer to the general fund to avoid Labor getting the funds twice. It also amends the date of that transfer from on or before July 31st, 2025 to on or before June 1st of 2025. DLS recommends amending the modified date to on or before June 1 of 2026, as the proposed modified date is in the past and it's prior to the bill's effective date. At the bottom of page 16 is the personnel section. In October of 2025, the Board of Public Works approved the abolition of 502.7 positions statewide, including 170.7 vacant positions and 332 positions associated with the Voluntary Separation Program, or VSP. Within Labor, 31.7 positions were abolished, of which about half were vacant and the other half were due to the VSP. As of December 31st, 2025, Labor had 539.5 vacant positions. However, most of those positions are in the Division of Paid Leave, including almost 250 positions that Labor does not intend on filling in fiscal 2026 because of the delayed start date for the family program. Additional discussion about that is in issue 1. Excluding the Division of Paid Leave, Labor's vacancy rate was just over 15% at the end of 2025, with almost 100 vacant positions in the Division of Workforce Development and Adult Learning. MD Labor should comment on the reasons for the high vacancy rate in that division, as well as plans to fill vacant positions across the department. The issues section begins on page 18 with a discussion of family implementation, starting with a description of the program itself for quick reference. Chapter 363 of 2025 delayed implementation of the program, moving the start date for required contributions to January of 2027, with benefit payments beginning between then and January of 2028. As of January 2026, Labor is on track to meet the deadlines and plans to begin benefit payments in January of 2028. On page 19, Exhibit 5 provides an overview of family funding by year. In fiscal 2027, the allowance increases by around 35% compared to fiscal 2026. That's primarily due to personnel costs, and it's driven by a decrease in the turnover rate from about 60% to 8% as family staffs up. As of February of 2026, 74 of the 366 positions have been filled in the Division of Paid Leave. The fiscal 2027 allowance includes 365 positions, and Labor intends to fill a majority of those in fiscal 2027 as the program begins to ramp up. On page 20, issue 2 discusses unemployment insurance. As discussed earlier, the fiscal 2027 allowance for administering the UI program decreases by almost 30% from fiscal 2026. This is primarily due to a double budgeting of federal and special funds in fiscal 2026. While more than $100 million in federal funds from the UI administrative allocation was included in the fiscal 2026 working appropriation, Labor is only anticipating receiving about $64 million of it. It's because an increase in the administrative allocation was assumed, but because of federal continuing resolutions, that increase never occurred. Much of that difference is covered by special funds from a new administrative fee that was added in the 2025 BRFA. That fee essentially redirects a portion of tax contributions from the UI Trust Fund to instead be used for UI administrative expenses. It helps close the gap between the federal administrative allocation and expenses that Labor incurs administering the program. The fiscal 2027 allowance includes $37 million from this fee. It's a slight increase from fiscal 26, which was $33 million. In fiscal 2025, 125 positions were added to the Division of Unemployment Insurance as part of an effort to bring the UI call center back in-house after it was outsourced during the pandemic. A large part of the decrease in contract expenses in the fiscal 2027 allowance reflects that effort. On page 22, Exhibit 6 shows that while unemployment claims did increase in fiscal 2025, they matched the fiscal 2019 level and are significantly lower than fiscal 2020 and 2021 during the height of the pandemic. Despite the return to normal levels, Exhibit 7 on page 23 shows that Labor does still struggle to pay claims in a timely manner, with an average of 67% of initial claims paid within 21 days in fiscal 2025. However, Labor has noted that this does include payments made on aged backlog cases where claims were originally denied, and decisions are typically made much faster. On page 25, Exhibit 8 shows that in fiscal 2025, appeals processing times varied significantly by level. The first level of appeal is the lower appeals division, which processed just 20% of appeals within 45 days. If a claimant is not satisfied with the lower appeals division, they can then appeal to the Board of Appeals, which had an average pending case age of 15 days. It's much less than their goal of 40 days. Labor attributed the performance discrepancy to a combination of differing case volumes between the levels, as well as the Board of Appeals' ability to deny review without a full hearing. At the bottom of page 25 and onto page 26 is a discussion of benefit overpayments stemming from an audit by the Office of Legislative Audits, which found that the Division of Unemployment Insurance had not timely pursued recovery of overpayments, with up to $760.7 million that is no longer collectible because the statute of limitations had run out. Overpayment collections were sporadic during the pandemic and paused entirely in January of 2022 due to a lawsuit regarding overpayment notices. While the Division of Unemployment Insurance resumed issuing overpayment determinations on new claims in September of 2023, they did not begin issuing retroactive determinations until December of 2025 and did not resume collections until January of 2026. MD Labor should comment on the total amount of unrecoverable overpayments, as well as how much of the unrecoverable overpayments would have been returned to the UI Trust Fund versus returned to the federal government as part of federal pandemic UI. Additionally, MD Labor should comment on collection activities to date, including how many overpayments have been repaid since collection activities resumed. Issue 3 discusses apprenticeships. On page 27, Exhibit 9 shows that the number of active apprentices grew by about 6% in fiscal 2025, continuing a long-term trend upwards. Despite that, the number of new apprentices fell by about 3%, and the number of apprenticeship graduates fell by over 21%. However, Labor indicates that the drop is likely due to timing, and the drop in graduates is not reflected when comparing calendar 25 to calendar 2024. Page 27 also discusses the Apprenticeship 2030 Commission, which released its final report of recommendations in March of last year. Several of these recommendations were included in Chapter 2 of 2025, the RAISE Act. This bill established the Maryland Office of Registered Apprenticeship Development, an advisory board, and created 2 new programs, which are discussed on page 28. The first program, the Maryland Pay Per Apprentice Program, was launched by Labor in January of 2026 as the Maryland Apprenticeship Incentive Program. The second program, Registered Apprenticeship Qualified Intermediary Program, was launched just last month as the Industry Apprenticeship Accelerator. Both programs were launched with funding that was allocated to the Dedicated Purpose Account, or DPA, in fiscal 2023 for apprenticeship initiatives. In October 2025, Labor submitted a budget amendment to transfer $12 million to support these programs, as well as fund technology infrastructure updates. Labor has indicated that they're planning on another $10 million transfer in fiscal 2027, which would leave $3 million remaining in the DPA. MD Labor should comment on plans for utilizing the remaining $3 million in the DPA. At the bottom of page 29 is a discussion on the Federal Government Employee Assistance Loan Fund. This fund was originally created to provide no-interest loans to federal employees who are required to work in Maryland but are not being paid due to a shutdown. Chapter 97 of 2025 expanded the purposes of the fund to include financial assistance for federal employees that are impacted by the closure, relocation, or mass layoff of a federal agency, and authorized a $5 million transfer from the Rainy Day Fund in fiscal 2025. While that transfer did not occur, Labor did submit a fiscal 2025 budget amendment to transfer a little under $1 million from the catastrophic event account to administer the program. However, due to timing, it was not processed before year end, and Labor reported that they intend to reprocess in fiscal 2026. MD Labor should comment on the timeline for submitting an updated fiscal 2026 budget amendment. Additionally, Labor should comment on the total amount needed from the CEA to cover program expenditures in fiscal 2026. As of the end of February 2026, Labor has made just over 3,600 loans through this program, totaling around $2.5 million. The vast majority of those loans were provided during the federal government shutdown in October and November of 2025. Recipients of those loans had until January 26th, 2026 to repay those loans. As of February 23rd, Labor reports that less than half have been repaid. They indicate that they intend to continue pursuing repayment for 90 days past the due date before sending them to DBM for collections. On page 31 is a list of recommended actions, all of which were discussed earlier. Additionally, pages 32 through 34 provide updates on ARPA funds, Employment Advancement Right Now or Earn Maryland investments, as well as last year's Cyber Maryland transfer. With that, I conclude my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much for your analysis. Are there any questions for the analysts? Seeing none, thank you. We are here to welcome Secretary Wu and team, so please feel free to introduce your team.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I'm joined here at the table by Deputy Secretary Jason Perkins Cohen, who is also the Interim Director of Unemployment Insurance, Assistant Secretary Aaron Roth, and our Budget Director Jason Kramer. I also have other colleagues here to answer other questions as needed. So good afternoon, Chair Smith and Vice Chair Wolek and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to present the department's budget for fiscal 27. I want to thank our DLS analyst, Connor Brown, for his thorough and thoughtful analysis, and of course, the DBM and Maryland Labor budget teams for all their hard work. Maryland is at a pivotal moment. In this environment, we are focused on building Maryland's workforce, protecting Marylanders, modernizing our systems, and increasing access to opportunity, and this budget reflects those priorities. I'm going to touch on a few highlights. All of the DLS items are addressed directly in our written testimony, and we're happy to answer questions about them. But overall, I wanted to note that we believe that this budget reflects the need to be competitive and to use precious resources wisely and expeditiously. First of all, talent is key to our competitiveness. This budget invests in workforce for Maryland's growth sectors. That includes an expanded Earn Maryland program at a level that will train nearly 5,000 workers across high-demand industries. The additional investment that was in the prior year's budget is continued through this year, and that expansion allowed for the training of over 2,000 more workers that serve over 200 new employers. I want to emphasize, I believe all our allocations for EARN will be out the door by April 2026. So we are making sure that we expend those funds, and it's a very popular program. These investments also, we have adjusted the EARN program to make sure these investments are supporting enough communities and SNAP recipients. The budget also focuses on Maryland's lighthouse sectors, including life sciences, IT, and aerospace. Through the Talent Innovation Fund and Cyber Maryland, we have now launched cyber ranges at all 16 community colleges, helping over 600 students who have already earned nearly 250 credentials. And I want to thank Delegate Forbes for her support and work in that area. We have also recently awarded grants for 3 cyber AI clinics projected to train over 600 Marylanders and support over 60 employers. Artificial intelligence is rapidly reshaping the world of work. Maryland has, according to the U.S. Treasury, one of the highest percentages of AI-exposed jobs of any state in this country. 2 weeks ago, the department announced $1.5 million to place college students and recent graduates into AI and lighthouse sector internships. We have already received close to $1 million in applications. We must also support existing workers to gain AI skills. In a recent survey by the Governor's Workforce Development Board AI Working Group, small and medium-sized employers cited AI skills training as their top need. This is why this budget proposes the MD Train Initiative, a targeted $2 million investment to help these employers adopt AI tools responsibly while supporting their existing workforce with new skills. We recognize that DLS has recommended eliminating funding for this initiative. We believe this investment is critical to support employers and build opportunity for workers, and so we respectfully ask that the committee reject this recommendation. Registered apprenticeship is a key part of providing access to opportunity, and in 2025, 14,000 Marylanders participated in registered apprenticeships, including 5,000 new apprentices. This historic investment, which, as was noted, has been made possible in part through the dedicated purpose account, has enabled the launch of apprenticeship incentive programs and the Industry Accelerator Program. These initiatives will focus on growing apprenticeship in newer sectors like healthcare and finance and cybersecurity, and also expanding high school level registered apprenticeship in accordance with the blueprint. Oops. We're already seeing very strong demand for these programs, and we anticipate robust take-up. We believe we will be able to exhaust the additional $3 million from DPA funds, and we will continue to adjust this strategy. I will note that legislation last session required the establishment of a new advisory committee, and also we were carrying out the recommendations of the Apprenticeship 2030 Commission, so we only received these funds, I believe it was in November of last year. So we've already launched 2 programs since that time, and we will continue to adjust our spending plan, but we feel confident that these resources will be well used. I want to comment for a moment on adult education. Adult ed serves Marylanders without a high school diploma or who are English language learners. On average, Marylanders with a high school diploma earn at least $10,000 more per year than those who do not have one. Last year, we served over 31,000 learners at an average cost of about $500 per participant. It's a very cost-effective program. DLS is recommending reducing funding for adult education by $400,000. We have serious concerns with this recommended reduction. This would trigger the loss of an additional $850,000 in federal funds and elimination of services to over 2,000 Marylanders. We urge the committee not to adopt these cuts and to preserve this funding to help thousands of Marylanders gain greater literacy and opportunity. While we're building the future workforce, we also have to strengthen protections for Marylanders, and I want to touch on the work of a couple of our divisions. The Office of Financial Regulation licenses nearly 18,000 financial service providers and resolved over 1,000 consumer complaints and secured more than $3 million in restitution for Maryland residents, along with nearly $800,000 in penalties. In an increasingly complex financial landscape that includes digital currency, virtual currency, and pullbacks at the federal level, strong state-level supervision matters more than ever. These special funds are critical to continuing that work. Similarly, labor and industry more than doubled wage recoveries, recouping nearly $2 million last year for Maryland workers. And Maryland Occupational Safety and Health continues to prioritize high-hazard industries and is preparing to implement the Davis-Martinez Act. We're also proud to highlight the department's swift implementation of the Protect Our Federal Workers Act of 2025, where we provided critical assistance and over $2 million worth of zero-interest loans to thousands of federal employees during the federal shutdown. As was noted, we have the $900,000 from fiscal 25. We are working with DBM on a budget amendment to make sure that we have the appropriate transfers from the catastrophic event account. Part of that issue has been, of course, the shutdown was just in the fall. We are still trying to determine how much of that funding will be recouped. Unfortunately, with the second partial shutdown, we have a number of individuals who may have received loans before, but obviously are facing reduced pay now. So we are trying to figure out how that's going to affect our overall repayment rate. We talked about unemployment insurance, and we are working diligently to improve that system and address the significant structural challenges we inherited. Labor has brought the call center back in-house. That reduced costs by over $20 million per year. We have also resumed providing in-person services and have served thousands of Marylanders, both at our headquarters downtown on Charles Street and at American Job Centers. The department has recovered more than $520 million in overpayments in 2025. We also restarted recovery processes with legally required notice and appeal rights. Some pandemic-era cases are now beyond the statute of limitations. However, we are focused on pursuing recovery where it is legally permissible and realistically achievable. Thousands of individuals have already come forward to pay amounts back, and millions of dollars have already been recovered. Unfortunately, as was noted, federal administrative funds to support the UI program just have not kept pace with the actual cost. And last May, it's noted in the analysis, labor lost over $20 million in funding that we had intended to use to improve the UI system. The federal government clawed that back. The administrative fee that Maryland Labor will begin collecting this year is therefore critical to maintaining the administration of this program. Finally, family and medical leave insurance remains on track. Payroll deductions will begin on January 1st, 2027, and benefits will be available in January of 2028. The department will be releasing the updated contributions rate shortly and will also be soft launching employer registration later this spring. I believe that our written, as I said, covers the other areas that DLS asked for comments on. And I will just close by saying this budget reflects our disciplined prioritization. It invests where results are strong. It protects Marylanders at a time when federal protections are receding. And it continues the hard work of modernizing systems and serving Maryland workers, consumers, and businesses. We respectfully request support for maintaining the key programs as noted in our submitted budget. Thank you, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you so much, Secretary Wu and team. Are there any questions? Wow, really? No questions? Well, I just want to say thank you for your time. You definitely have your work cut out with you with that recovery of the overpayments. I mean, that's significant. It almost mirrors our deficit in terms of like the overall. So, I mean, I know that we all inherit in government ongoing responsibilities and obligations from others, but if there's any way we can be helpful, please stay in close contact. And I'm sure you're really happy to be the acting head of unemployment insurance right now. So awesome, you know. But one question I did have was related to, you highlighted that there were some AI training sessions that you were doing across the state, and I didn't know if you could highlight where some of those training sessions were occurring.
Let me take them in a couple buckets here. First, I will say.
Clinic, excuse me.
Oh, yes, the AI and cyber clinics, exactly. So we just issued these awards, and we awarded 3 grants. I cannot remember, and Assistant Secretary Aaron Roth may remember them better than I don't have them right in front of me, but basically they were regional. So we asked, working with these, they were awarded to higher institutions in partnership with other groups, and we asked that they be regional because sometimes, we don't just want this to be limited to the students at one institution. What they are is really trying to provide hands-on learning experience that can either be to current students or recent graduates for individuals to learn cyber and AI skills, so the students, and then apply them sort of like a law clinic or a health clinic to help businesses, often small and medium-sized businesses, coming in and saying, I know that I can't do these cyber patches by myself. I don't have staff to do this. Can you help me do this for low or no cost? And that way, the student gets hands-on experience, the business or nonprofit or other employer gets their cyber issues addressed, and also students are learning these new AI-based tools, because we really see that, there's been a fall off in hiring in some of these areas right now, and we hear employers saying, I want people who have hands-on experience. I don't know how to use these tools yet, but I want someone to come in who demonstrates they have mastered them, are using them in real-world applications. So we're trying to bridge that gap, meeting the needs of our smaller businesses, helping these students who have gotten a degree in many cases and certifications, but they can't show that they've been able to apply this in the real world.
Thank you for that, because a few months ago, I was at a small business forum. It was about I would say 200 plus small and minority business owners. And, I just asked the crowd, how many of you use AI tools, just like in whatever your business does? I would say over half of people's, hands went up. And then when I asked, have you received any support, like technical training or support around AI from either, your county, city, or any, government, state government actor, and nobody's hands went up. So it seems like there is a gap, and it seems like this clinic is a step in trying to kind of bridge that. But that might be something where there's even some collaboration with a commerce and those who are working with small businesses. It seems like there's some opportunity here, because I think some people don't realize they already use AI tools in some regards. They might not recognize that. And then I think there's also just the fear of it and what it can mean for folks. And so I would love in the interim to think about how we can better support that, because it's not the future, it's the right now, and we want to support our workers and businesses here.
If I might, Madam Chair, that is why we included the MD train proposal as well, because that was specifically, the Governor's Workforce Board heard from small and medium-sized businesses. I know I need to get these additional skills from my management as well as my frontline workers, but I don't see a place where I can get help from the state. We're proposing to do sort of a match, right? Like some employer skin in the game. It's not just the state doing it to stretch the dollars further, but that is the concept behind that, is because people said, they're all these things being marketed to me. I'm not sure which ones to pick, what's useful. So we wanted to provide that support.
Mm-hmm. Vice Chair Wallach.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Secretary Wu. Thank you for your presentation. I just had some follow-up questions, similar to a conversation we had earlier with Department of Commerce. When I was thinking about the Department of Labor, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I'm sort of thinking about it is categorizing your work in 3 buckets. One is getting people to work, like pathways to employment. Then while people are in work, making sure that that condition is conducive, they have supports around that. And then should they lose employment, being the 3rd category, how to support in that space. I know you have a hodgepodge of other things that are in the department, but by and large, that feels like a bulk of what you do. Would that be a fair way to sort of think about it?
Yes, absolutely. I might say it's protecting workers and consumers. We think of it that way, and that's how we do financial regulation, student loans, like kind of, people out in the world. Yeah.
Okay, that's helpful.
Absolutely.
As you sort of, in these categories, are there benchmarks that you have that you are tracking when you're thinking about, how effective your programs are to employ people, and then benchmarks in the sort of workspace? I'm really excited to see that the family and medical leave is going to be online by January 2028, so that's really exciting. But what are sort of the benchmarks that you track? And is that something that's, I will say that I was in the federal government many years ago, and there was such a thing as a scorecard that we had for agencies, which was like top level things that the management was tracking. So that's really what I'm trying to get at in terms of effectiveness. What are things that are top of mind for you as you're looking at your agency to make sure that it's meeting its mission?
Absolutely. Well, I will say as a top line matter, we do have, each division has its own metrics, and it had not been the practice in the department previously to have a strategic plan with quarterly metrics and milestones, but we instituted that in this administration. We actually have just been wrapping up some of our Q2 outcomes meetings with all our divisions, and we look across them and see, did you meet the benchmarks or not? Did you meet the milestones or not? So that is a practice that we have instituted. It depends, depending on each division, obviously, what the numbers are. Also, for programs that are heavily federal funded, like unemployment insurance and workforce, we have, and safety and health, we have extensive reporting up to the federal government along many, many metrics. But I will say we also try to do things, like Earn Maryland is a good example, where we look at independent studies to check what is the ROI. So for example, with Earn, we know that those studies show there's a sort of $19 to 1 return on investment for those programs. We also are doing things, and this was mentioned in the analysis, of working, for example, in correctional ed, working with Department of Corrections to say, we are getting people more high school diplomas, that's great. We have certain kinds of occupational training. What are the outcomes? What are the highest value outcomes? And we recognize training in an institution may have many values. It may help reduce violence. It may help reduce recidivism. It may improve confidence. But also we want to be tracking the workforce outcomes because that is our ultimate goal. I think with all of these, working with our education partners is a good example. Completion of a degree is wonderful, but we really want to see people in a good job, and we want to see what the wages are, and that tends to be what we focus on.
And so in each of those categories, if I may, what does success look like for you for each of those? Is there some top line metric in each of them?
Sure, I can go through some of them. So for example, in workforce, we do look at how many people completed the workforce training program, did they attain a recognized industry credential, how many of them were placed in employment within 6 months of completion, and what was the median wage. In areas like financial regulation, actually there we have a whole bunch of things where we have to make sure that banks or credit unions are meeting certain measures and what they're doing. With labor and industry, for example, we have really tried to become more, as I mentioned, we've doubled the recoveries in wages for workers, but we're also trying to say, how many workplaces did you visit? How many workers did you interview? How many investigations were completed? What were the outcomes in terms of wages recovered? So those are just some examples. And of course, for unemployment insurance, we have the federal benchmarks as well. How timely have we been in recovery? Unfortunately, we're still doing a lot of the pre-2023 work to clean up, so that muddies the picture a little bit, but we have a number of benchmarks. How many claims are paid within 21 days? What percentage of claims are flagged for potential fraud or something? And it's still running about 10 to 15% in each claims. Maybe they're just questions, but we have to be vigilant because people's identity does get stolen. And how are we doing on the contribution side of collecting from employers? A lot of these measures haven't been rigorously enforced and checked, and so that's something we've put in place.
Thank you.
And we're happy to provide more detailed metrics. I'm sorry, we are a diverse agency, so I'm sure our horse racing director is here. He could tell you about his measures, but we're happy to provide more information about that to the committee.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Delegate Tolles.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I have a question, and I apologize if you went over it already or if I missed it, but I wanted to expand on your testimony as it relates to the industry accelerator that you launched in February. Could you expand on that a bit? And then I wanted to determine, I know you had last year or 2 years ago with the RAISE Act, but last year, I think you all did it. But I wanted to see how you are working with the labor apprentice the labor unions with the apprentice program. I know they had some concern to make sure they were at the table as it relates to getting skilled trades that were licensed. And so I wanted to see how that is working, that relationship, and then being able to expand on the apprenticeship accelerator, because I noticed that you have healthcare, public administration. I wanted to kind of get it.
Absolutely. Well, I will start and then turn it over to Assistant Secretary Roth to say more. First of all, the RAISE Act was is part of the governor's legislative agenda. I guess that was last year. The years are all blending together. And that accomplished a number of important things. It really emphasized the importance of intermediaries. It addressed some questions people had about, especially with new and emerging industries, how do we think about ratios? And we had a lot of extensive discussion with our partners in organized labor about what's the best way to make sure that we continue to preserve safety and quality in registered apprenticeships. So in industries where they might be dangerous to the worker or student or the trainee or to the public, we have to make sure there's very close supervision and maintaining those ratios and that quality. So that legislation really helped to establish a number of important things in apprenticeship. I will say it's been a personal passion of mine to expand registered apprenticeship. I was part of, when I was at the Feds, I was part of establishing the first National Apprenticeship Week 12 years ago, and now it's going strong. And really expanding, if possible, to non-traditional occupations. And this is where I'll turn it to Assistant Secretary Roth. Maryland has been terrific about working closely with the building trades, and we also love to see how they're partnering with our community colleges. It should be really one ecosystem. So you can be getting your learning at a community college, getting your hours on the job, and so you're getting credit towards maybe someday a college degree. At the same time, you're gaining these valuable skills and working and being paid the entire time. But let me turn it to Assistant Secretary Roth to talk more about the accelerator.
Sure. Thank you very much for the question and interest. Let me make sure you can hear me all right. So the accelerator is the intermediary part of the RAISE Act. We have put $5 million forth to support non-traditional sectors in embracing the model that, frankly, we've seen such great success with our organized labor and building trades colleagues. Right now, we have about 85% of our overall apprenticeship employer network are concentrated in the trades. But we know the model of mentorship, on-the-job training, what you learn in the classroom really being reinforced with what your employer needs you to know on the job, and having access to opportunities where as your skills increase, so do your wages. We know that model can be effective in other sectors at where they may be, it's a bit of a culture shift, quite honestly. And so we want to help employers and make it easy for them to participate, because we know it will help employers. It'll also help workers. And so we had our chief economist and his team work with our apprenticeship team to take a really data-driven approach at where's the demand in the state, where's the projected demand, and where are the opportunities based on what we know about those various industry sectors. So that's how we came up with a list of employers like public administration, finance, et cetera, education's another. Really because we see that this model could be very effective for those employers. And so the intermediary investment is intended to support employers by getting acclimated to the opportunity, being recruited, making it easier for any paperwork that's involved. And we have a pre-proposal conference for that investment on Monday. We actually have over 160 individuals registered. And as Secretary mentioned, we just rolled this out last week.
Just a quick comment, Madam Chair. Thank you so much, Madam Secretary, and for your team. I just wanted to highlight that I would like to see with this investment that we really look at training our hospital staff, and increasing the ability for, the staff that would, bring the meals to the individuals that are sick, for individuals who, need to get a shot, or those sort of, supportive roles in the healthcare industry, the individual that's coming to ensure the room is sanitized properly, because I think we have a shortage in our healthcare industry with all levels. And so I want to ensure that we are using investment really in that industry, I think. Of course, I like public administration, but I'm hearing time and time again about our healthcare industry and just needing those kind of, those level workers that, can just go to community college, get certified for that particular trade and be able to, work in our hospitals. So I think, and particularly with what's happening with administration with nurses, to be able to use this investment to support those efforts in increasing our nurses in the state and supporting our nurses who've been shut down by the federal government.
Well, Delegate, we'd be happy to come brief you. We actually have been thinking along very similar lines and had a number of calls just in the last couple of weeks with 1199, a lot of healthcare providers. Maybe traditionally in the department, we have focused on some of the entry-level healthcare roles. What we really are trying to focus on now, using all our tools, earn, apprenticeship. We also are going to be partnering with MDH on some rural healthcare money, is to say people who are in these allied health jobs already have touched in the healthcare system. How can we help them move up the ladder to more skilled jobs like patient care technician or surgical technician or some kind of nursing? And because they're already attached, they already have, maybe that patient-facing experience. How can we get them into really moving up these career ladders? So we have a bunch of strategies we're working on. We'd love to come talk more with you about it and get your thoughts.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And thank you so much for your participation today, for all that you're doing on behalf of the workers of Maryland. And if there are no other comments, then we thank you for your time today. There are no other witnesses signed up that I can see, so that would conclude the budget hearing for the Department of Labor. And we'll now move on to the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. Oh, Sarah Baker, that's why you're here. Yes, great to see you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am going to start with Exhibit 1 on page 5, which shows the trends in first-time applications. After dropping during the pandemic, applications have grown 33.5%, reaching a high of almost 15,000 in fall 25, resulting in UMBC's largest incoming class of 2,326. Exhibit 2 on page 6 shows trends in fall undergraduate enrollment, which grew for a second year, increasing 2.1% or by 222 students, with continuing students accounting for almost 70% of this increase. And this is the largest increase of continuing students since fall 2020. The number of first-time students grew by 14% in 24, but slightly declined in 25. And the increase reflects UMBC's reinstating its financial optimization strategy due to the availability of additional need-based aid funds, and the decline is due to adjusting the cohort size to ensure resources are available to ensure student success. Exhibit 3 on page 7 shows the trend in the enrollment of international students, which grew to over 137% between fall 2020 and 23 to over 2,500 students. And this was due to a 275% increase in enrollments in UMBC's master's program. This was driven by strong global demand, available capacity, and strategic partnerships that created a strong pipeline of international students. And as you see, enrollments in the master's program has since declined by 60.5% to 679 students, reflecting UMBC's deliberate approach to managing growth to ensure capacity and that student supports are available to ensure successful outcomes. Turning to Exhibit 4 on page 8 in retention rates, after increasing to its highest rate of 87% with the 2020 cohort, the second year rate declined to 80% with the 22 cohort, and a similar trend can be seen with the third year rate, which also reached a high with the 2020 cohort of 72% and then declined to 66% with the 22 cohort. And these declines reflect the impact the pandemic had on students returning to campus. While the rates have since increased with the 24 and 25 cohorts, it is still below that of the 2020 cohort. Exhibit 5 on page 9 shows the 6-year graduation rates. And overall, the rates started declining with the 2018 cohorts and dropped to its lowest levels with the 2020 cohorts, which was the first cohort to be impacted by the pandemic. Exhibit 6 on page 10 shows spending on institutional aid, which, as you know, is a key factor to improving student success. Overall, spending increased $10.5 million between 2020 and 2025 to $40.7 million. Spending on need-based aid during this time increased $3.2 million compared with scholarships that grew by $7 million. In 25, spending on need-based aid accounted for 24.2% of institutional aid. As shown on Exhibit 7 on page 11, as students receiving aid graduate at a higher rate than those who don't. And I would note overall transfer students graduate at a higher rate than full-time students. And the graduation rate of the full-time students who did not receive aid fell from 45% with the 2017 cohort to 30% with the 19 cohort, although it did rebound to 37% with the following cohort. We asked the president to comment on the low graduation rate of full-time students who did not receive financial aid and seemed to be more adversely affected than the community college transfer students who did not receive aid. Factors contributing to the higher graduation rates of community college transfers and efforts being taken to improve student success. So the decline in enrollment over the years, along with the impact of the pandemic, can be seen in the number of degrees awarded shown on Exhibit 8 on page 12, which declined by 411 degrees between 22 and 24, of which 162 was related to the decline in the number of STEM degrees. However, the number of degrees did increase in 25 by 95, with 64% of those degrees awarded in the STEM area. Discussion of the budget starts on page 13. And in 26, UMBC faced an $11.8 million reduction to their appropriation, which was mainly met by eliminating 12.1 vacant positions and reducing various expenditures such as contractual service, supplies, advertising, and travel. Turning to the cancellation of federal awards, as shown on Exhibit 9 on page 14, as of November of last year, 44 awards were canceled, resulting in a loss of $21.1 million. Of which 10 of the awards canceled by the National Institute of Health accounted for $9.2 million of the loss. We asked the president to comment on the impact of the canceled federal grants, stop work orders, and new compliance regulations, and on the pace of awarding of new grants and contracts. Moving to Exhibit 10 on page 15 shows expenditures of unrestricted funds by program area between 25 and 26. Education general expenditures increased 1.1% or $5 million. And this is mainly related to spending on instruction, increasing $10.9 million, primarily related to increase in the number of faculty positions and general salary increases. This increase is partly offset by $4.6 million decline in research, which reflects a more conservative projection of expenditures in 26, and $4.3 million decrease in academic support, reflecting a realignment of the budget with resources such as removing long-term vacant positions. Exhibit 11 on page 17 shows the proposed budget. And state funding increases 2.7% or $5.8 million in 27. Increases include $5.2 million in statewide costs, which is mainly due to health insurance, $3 million for general salary increases that's centrally budgeted within DBM, and about $191,000 for the opening of a new facility. These increases are partly offset by $2.6 million related to an increase in turnover expectancy. Exhibit 12 on page 18 shows funding per full-time equivalent student, and overall, state funding per FTES grew 47% between 2020 and 25 to $19,476. So most of the increases occurred from 23 and 25 due to a variety of factors, including general salary increases, restoration of the 21 BPW cost containment actions, and funding for various mandates. The recommendation is on page 20, and that is to concur with the governor's allowance. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you so much, Ms. Baker. Are there any questions for the analysts? Seeing none, welcome, President. How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Thank you for hanging with us.
Oh, I admire your stamina and commitment, I'm impressed. Good afternoon, everyone. I first just want to say thank you to the governor and also to the entire legislature for your support of higher education over the years, and especially sitting here for UMBC, but I'm also thanking you for my colleagues who sit behind me in Salisbury. We appreciate your continued support. I also want to thank you, Chair Smith, for your support and time in getting to know UMBC, and Vice Chair Wolick in her absence, and all members of the committee. Thank you so much. And I especially want to thank Sarah Baker, who, as I say all the time when I hear her analysis, it makes me think that she lives at UMBC and really knows us, so I appreciate her taking the time to visit our campus to understand it well and then to do an extraordinary analysis. I'm just going to speak quickly to the two questions and happy to answer any other questions. The first question is regarding the graduation rate of full-time students who do not receive institutional aid. This is the group of students that is the most concerning to us. These are the students who do not have the ability to get the Pell Grants because they have too much family income, but they also are the students who cannot really write the full check. So we've called these for years across higher education the donut hole kids. And they're not all kids, right, whatever age they are. The donut hole students. And so that is our biggest challenge. These are also often the students who may not have reached the level to receive the merit aid. So they really are in the center. Like, they're strong students. They're not, at the lowest financial need, but they need money still. So we've done several things, and we think, so I'll just comment that the reason we believe our transfer students who also don't receive any aid do better is because they have 2 years of college under their belt. And I will tell you that our community colleges in Maryland really prepare our students well. They graduate a little faster than our first-year students across the board with or without aid. They are highly prepared. And so we're working now on student success efforts for this group of students, but also some financial wellness and support for these students. We just spent an entire year, a couple of years ago, being evaluated by the National Institute of Student Success to look at all of the systemic actions that we take as an institution that cause challenges for any student, but certainly students who are kind of this middle group of students and without the financial aid. They did a thorough analysis and have given us back now a report that we are implementing. It will be a year or so as you see those changes start to impact, I think, more and more of these students. But it's everything from enhancing our academic advising, which is, it's not rocket science, it's just where it's really telling us what we need to do, to improving how we communicate with this group of students around their finances. We're doing a series of financial wellness support. We've actually renamed our financial aid office from financial aid and scholarships to financial wellness and assistance, reflecting what we really are trying to provide to these students. And for me, when we talk about philanthropy and raising money, you often think about raising money for the highest financial need students. That's not who I need to raise money for. I need to raise money for the students who can't get the financial aid and who also are not the students who can write the full check. So this will be our focus for philanthropy and raising our scholarships. So that speaks to the first question. To the second question, did you want me to keep going, Chair? Okay. To the second question regarding cancel federal grants, stop work orders, and all of the things impacting our research. We have certainly been impacted, but we've also done incredibly well. So in fiscal year 22, we were about at $82 million of research funding. That is also the same year that we became an R1, Research One institution. Last year, that number had grown to $150 million. This past year, we're at $185 million. And we anticipate by the time we come to the end of this fiscal year, we would love for it to be $185 million again, but we have lost about 40 grants and totaling about, we had 9 of those reinstated because of all of the reasons, legal and otherwise. The good news was that the 9 that were reinstated were the ones that were of the highest grant value, at least from a financial standpoint. We lost a total of about $14 million worth of grants. So over the next 2 to 3 years, we imagine it'll be about 3 to 4 million, 2 to 4 million annually for what we have lost. But I am really proud of our faculty, staff, and students to continue to see this increase in our research portfolio. Tells us several things. They're doing extraordinary work. But we also are thankfully situated very well for the increases that the federal government is putting into research. So they're increasing Department of Defense, cybersecurity, AI, all the things I've been hearing you all talk about as I've sat back there. And our faculty are world-class experts in these places, and so they've been incredibly successful. So I will stop there and happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you for your testimony, and even though that's a decrease, some of your peers have lost a ton of money. So this is still a somewhat positive conversation to be having. Are there any questions for the president? I mean, it looks like your budget has got an increase. I guess there's not a lot to complain about.
We are grateful that we have not had an additional decrease cut, and we are not complaining.
All right, well, we only have one other public witness. That would conclude your testimony. And so I'd like to bring up Deborah Michaels from AFSCME.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've done this twice now where I
sorry.
did not introduce
Oh,
Jared.
can you, Ms.
I just wanted to
Michaels,
say
just a
this is my wonderful budget person,
Hi,
Jared.
wonderful budget person.
Yes,
We love our wonderful budget people. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Ms. Michaels.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, committee members. Appreciate your time. So I, as said, I represent AFSCME. I also work at UMBC. I am on the AFSCME level. I am, for the state of Maryland, the Central Vice President for the Council, Maryland Council 3. I also am the president of our local that represents the workers at UMBC. And this has been a wonderful, I'm going to keep it short, but this has been a wonderful listening to the other testimonies, because it all kind of goes into and ties together with what we do at UMBC. So like with the Department of Commerce and Budget, the testimony that came from the representative from MTC, the Maryland Tech Council, stated that Maryland's strength is our workforce. We educate that workforce. We have partnerships with federal entities in cybersecurity, T. Rowe Price, not to mention our designation as a Research One university. And this speaks to our success in supporting our students, as well as the community across the state, Delmarva region, and the Capital District. In supporting our students, I work in the Division of Information Technology, all right? And I have been at UMBC for 18 years. I've known our wonderful financial person for a long time. And I'm looking around this room and I'm seeing the cameras and the microphones. We employ our students, and they're the ones that install the cameras and troubleshoot whenever we have events. The desktop for our laptops and our computers, keeping them up to date. Cybersecurity students, we're giving them real world skills when they're going out into the workforce once they graduate. So that's another way we financially and working and supporting our students academically. And our dedicated staff. So I implore that we continue to support the negotiated increases, because when you put money in our pockets, it goes right out into the economy. So I appreciate the support, and I am done here. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your longtime service to UMBC and supporting our students and future taxpayers. Thanks for all that you do. And that concludes, wait, any questions, first of all, for AFSCME? Okay, no questions. All right, that concludes the budget hearing for UMBC. And last but certainly not least, Salisbury University, and Sarah Baker again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to start with Exhibit 1 on page 4, which shows the trends in first-time applications. And after declining during the pandemic, applications have grown by 15.2% to almost 8,825. And this resulted in the largest entering class of 1,470 students in fall 25. Exhibit 2 on page 5 shows the trends in fall undergraduate enrollment, which grew for a second year, increasing 3% or 189 students to 6,477, with continuing students accounting for 42% of this increase. And as you saw, as with UMBC, this was the first increase in continuing students since fall 2015. While the number of transfer students has increased to 509, it is well below the 2014 when transfers totaled 997, and this decrease may be partly attributed to the continual decline in community college enrollments. However, the increase of 18 transfer students in 25 may be due to the recent increases in enrollment at the community colleges. Exhibit 3 on page 7 shows the retention, the trend in the retention rates, and these are similar to what I just showed you at UMBC, with the second and third year rates falling to the lowest level of 77 and 61% with the 22 cohort, and this will reflect the impact of the pandemic had on students returning to campus. And while the second year rate has returned to pre-pandemic levels, the third year rate is still below that of the 2019 cohort. However, since the rates tend to mirror each other, the third year rate for the 25 cohort is expected to improve. Exhibit 4 on page 8 shows the 6-year graduation rates. And in general, the rate started to decline with the 2017 cohorts and dropped to its lowest level with the 2020 cohorts. And again, this was the first cohort to be impacted by the pandemic. Exhibit 5 on page 9 shows the spending on institutional aid. And overall spending increased $6.1 million between 2020 and 25 to $17.9 million. And most of the increase of $5.1 million occurred from 22 to 25, with most of it going towards scholarships. In 2020, 15.7% of expenditures went towards need-based aid, and since then has declined to 10.3% in 25. Now, this decrease runs counter to the Regent's instructions that institutions use a portion of increases in tuition revenues for need-based aid in order to offset tuition increases for those students with the highest financial needs, thereby holding them harmless. We asked the President to comment on the decline of the amount of institutional aid going to need-based aid. As shown on Exhibit 6 on page 10, students that do not receive aid graduate at a higher rate than those who don't. And again, transfer students graduate at a higher rate than the full-time students. As previously mentioned, the 2020 cohort was the first impacted by the pandemic, and it seems to have affected the full-time students who did not receive aid, whose graduation rate dropped to 39%. And the rate for full-time students receiving aid from 71% with the 2019 cohort to 62% with the 2020 cohort. We asked the President to comment on factors that led to the worsening of the graduation rate for the 2020 cohort of the full-time students receiving aid and not receiving aid, and why transfers seem to graduate at a higher rate, and also efforts to ensure success of full-time students. So the decline in enrollment over the years, again, along with the impact of the pandemic, can be seen in the number of degrees awarded, as shown on Exhibit 7 on page 11. Salisbury awarded the highest number of degrees of over 1,900 in 2020, has since fallen by 531 degrees by 25. However, I note that the health profession degrees conferred reached its highest level of 141 in 25. Discussions on the budget start on page 12. And in 26, Salisbury faced a $5.1 million reduction to their appropriation, which was mainly met by eliminating 20 vacant positions and reducing spending on facility renewals compared to the spending in 25. Turning to the cancellation of federal awards, as shown on Exhibit 8 on page 13, as of November of last year, 4 awards have been canceled, resulting in a loss of about $479,000. One award from the Department of Education accounted for $342,000 of the loss. Moving to Exhibit 9 on page 14 shows expenditures of unrestricted funds by program areas in 25 and 26. Education general expenditures decreased 3.4% or $6.4 million, and this is mainly due to $13.9 million decrease in operations and maintenance of plants related to one-time expenditures in 25 for renovation projects and replacement of kitchen exhaust hood systems in the Commons building. And this is partly offset by a $2.7 million increase in spending and instruction related general salary increases and hiring additional faculty for summer and winter term based on an increase in course offerings. However, E&G expenditures in 25 and 26 exceeded the E&G revenues. And as shown on Exhibit 10 on page 15, except for 21, expenditures have increasingly exceeded revenues. And these shortfalls were covered by surpluses and auxiliary enterprises, which are self-supporting programs that rely on charges to students and faculty to cover expenses. And while institutions use auxiliary surpluses to cover shortfalls in the academic enterprise, it's not a sustainable model over long term, for it relies on increasing enrollment and/or charges for services. These increasing largest deficit raise concerns, including why revenues and expenditures have not been better aligned, and if students are being overcharged or spending on auxiliaries being reduced to cover the shortfall. We asked the President to comment on the reliance on the relatively high auxiliary surpluses to cover E&G spending and efforts to align expenditures with revenues. Exhibit 11 on page 17 shows the proposed budget. And state funding increases 3.3% or $3.1 million in 27. And these increases include $2.8 million for statewide costs, again, mainly related to health insurance, $1.4 million for the general salary increases that are budgeted centrally in DBM, and over $60,000 for the opening new facility. These increases are partly offset by $1.1 million related to an increase in turnover expectancy. Exhibit 12 on page 18 shows funding per full-time equivalent student. In overall, state funding per FTS has grown 113.3% between 2017 and 25 to $15,233. Most of these have occurred, most of the increase occurred from 22 and 24 due to a variety of factors, the same as you saw in UMBC for general salary increases, restoration of the 21 BP cost containment actions, and funding for various mandates coupled with declining enrollment. The recommendation is on page 20 and is to concur with the governor's allowance. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Baker, for that excellent.
If not, thank you. And the President of Salisbury, can you come forward? And I need to apologize to your students. I had a 4 o'clock meeting with them that I am not at.
That is okay.
They're here. Excellent. Please proceed with your testimony.
Thank you so much, Delegate Forbes, and to Madam Chair in absentia. Members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to be here to speak with you today on behalf of Salisbury University. I am joined at the table today with Aurora Edenhart-Pepe, who is my Vice President for Administration and Finance, and Eli Modlin, who's my Chief of Staff. I am also extremely pleased to let you know that also present in the room today are many SU students, faculty, and staff who are here participating in our SU Advocacy Day, and I'm so proud that they are able to be here with us. I would also like to extend my sincere gratitude to our analyst, Sarah Baker, for the excellent analysis of Salisbury University and for continuously visiting our campus. We are always so happy to welcome you. We also want to thank Laura Hyde and Emily Haskell, and we're so pleased that you could see firsthand all of the excellence that I have the honor of seeing and engaging with every day. In front of you is my full testimony, but I will share a few highlights before turning to the questions that have been proposed by the analyst. This year marks a historic milestone for Salisbury University as we celebrate 100 years of educating Maryland's students and serving Maryland's communities. What began in 1925 with just over 100 students has grown into a university that strengthens every sector of our state, from education to healthcare to business, science, and public service. Our centennial celebration, Salisbury Forever, honors the legacy that continues through community events, partnerships, and campus enhancements that reflect the depth of our commitment to the state of Maryland. Today's students continue to carry that legacy forward. Our incoming class this fall was the second largest in Salisbury University history, with strong representation from first-generation and minority students. And their success is reflected in our outcomes. Salisbury University holds the highest four-year graduation rate among USM master's institutions and the second highest six-year graduation rate. Both rates improved this year. First-year retention has also increased to 79%, with minority student retention rising by 2 percentage points, showing that students who come to SU want to stay at SU and furthering our progress towards closing equity gaps. Our student body is now more diverse than ever, with 33% of our students identifying as minorities. As we continue to impact the lives of not just our students, but our entire community, we are extremely grateful for the General Assembly's support for our Performing Arts Center that is planned for downtown Salisbury. This new facility will not only significantly enhance performing arts education for students, but will serve as a cultural anchor and an economic driver for our region. Salisbury University's commitment to community runs deep. Thousands of residents visit our galleries, theaters, and research centers each year. Through Delmarva Public Radio and PAC 14, we bring cultural, civic, and educational programming into homes across the region. and our students, faculty, and staff engage beyond our campus as well. Through Maryland's largest AmeriCorps program, our Presidential Citizen Scholars develop long-term civic projects that address pressing community needs. Teams of Salisbury University volunteers have built more than 100 wheelchair ramps for Eastern Shore residents, and hundreds of students participate annually in the big event, and I Love Salisbury, supporting local community members through various service projects. This sustained engagement earned SU a renewed Carnegie Community Engagement classification, recognizing our university-wide commitment to public service. Student athletes contribute to that commitment too, completing more than 3,000 hours of community service each year, a recognition that earned Salisbury University the NCAA Community Service Award both in 24 and 25. SU also plays a central role in addressing statewide workforce needs. Our Seidel School of Education is the second largest producer of teachers in Maryland, with nearly 10,000 education graduates living and working in the state. Our Health and Human Services programs prepare students for work in rural and aging communities, and nearly 2,900 Salisbury University nursing graduates now serve the state of Maryland. The Eastern Shore Child Care Resource Center, housed at SU, continues to provide vital training and support at a time when child care availability is a statewide concern. At the same time, Salisbury is expanding opportunities for students through partnerships with NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center, the Maryland Army National Guard, and the Washington Commanders, creating pathways for career development, hands-on learning, and professional mentorship. Our commitment to high-impact practices is further reflected in national recognition. SU has been a top producer of Fulbright students for 7 consecutive years, and in 2023 was ranked as the #1 master's level producer of Fulbright students in the nation. More recently, we were thrilled to celebrate our second Gates Cambridge Scholar, one of only 26 students in the United States earning a full graduate scholarship to the University of Cambridge in England this year. Finally, SU remains deeply engaged in driving regional economic growth. Our Purdue School of Business and Rommel Center for Entrepreneurship support local startups, innovators, and small businesses, while National Science Foundation partnerships are helping us expand research capacity in areas like STEM and artificial intelligence. For a century, Salisbury University has helped shape Maryland's workforce, strengthening its communities and expanding opportunity. And we are proud of the role we play in the state's success, and we look forward to continuing that work for the next 100 years. I would now like to turn briefly to the questions that have been presented by DLS. Again, I have provided detailed responses as part of my submitted testimony, but let me make a few points to highlight. The first request asks me to comment on the decline of the amount of institutional aid going toward need-based aid. What I would like to emphasize here is that there has been a shift. It isn't a reduction in our commitment to need-based aid. It's largely a result of timing and competitiveness. We award merit scholarships early in the student's senior year to compete for high-achieving students nationally and to strengthen our aid offer early in the process. In other words, many students receive their merit awards in October and on through the fall. Need-based aid, by contrast, can't be calculated until federal data is available months later. So when strong students receive early merit aid, it naturally reduces their remaining demonstrated need. So at the same time, I would note that our student need is actually rising. Our Pell-eligible first-year enrollment grew by over 5% this fall. Overall, new undergraduate enrollment grew by 2%, and 28% of our undergraduates now receive Pell. So this is the highest rate in our history for the second straight year. While the mix of aid types may shift, the total amount of institutional aid continues to grow, and we're enrolling more Marylanders, more Pell students, and very strong academic performers. So it's really about timing. The second question I've been asked to comment on are factors that led to the worsening of the graduation rate of the 2020 cohort of full-time students receiving and not receiving aid, and why transfers graduate at a higher rate, and what efforts are made to ensure the success of our full-time students. I'd like to start by addressing our graduation rates for our fall 2019 cohort, which is reported as part of fiscal year 20 data. Like institutions across the country, Salisbury University saw declines in both retention and graduation following the onset of COVID-19. The fall 29 cohort was hit particularly hard because they were just halfway through their first year when the pandemic shut everything down. Two main factors drove the challenges for this particular cohort for us. First, we had a higher share of Pell students, and Pell students nationally experienced the greatest financial and personal disruptions during COVID-19. Many of our Pell students who didn't graduate didn't enroll anywhere else, and another large share shifted to two-year colleges. Our out-of-state students, which was about 18% of that cohort, often ended up transferring to public institutions in their home states once the pandemic sent everyone home and made in-state tuition more attractive. On the other hand, our transfer students have been graduating at higher rates because of the profile of those students has also changed. Even though the total transfer enrollment is down, the students we are enrolling are arriving with more credits and clearer pathways. Almost 9 out of the 10 students who come into us now have more than 60 credits or a full associate's degree, and those students earn higher GPAs and finish at stronger rates. We have made improvements to our credit evaluation tools, and our transfer merit aid has also helped. We're also taking direct action to support full-time students. When we saw the 2019 cohort's retention drop, we moved quickly, and the following year cohort saw a 2-year point improvement. We launched a program called the Near Completer Initiative in 2024, which includes a $1,000 Finish Your Flight award, and it's targeted at students who didn't complete before. And within the first year, nearly half of those students have either returned to Salisbury or have finished their degree. Our Student Success Council, formed in 2024, is removing barriers, improving policies, and scaling what works. And our Seagull Circle mentoring program, which is funded through the University System of Maryland, is also already making a measurable difference in students' GPAs. The last question I've been asked to comment on is the reliance on the relatively high auxiliary surpluses to cover E&G and on efforts to align E&G expenditures with revenues. In recent year, we have relied on auxiliary surpluses to offset E&G deficit, but those surpluses are not a result of overcharging students, nor do we see that as a long-term strategy. In fact, the surpluses in fiscal year 24 and fiscal year 25 appeared larger than they actually were because of an accounting misclassification, where some facility renewal costs that should have been shared with auxiliaries were actually charged entirely to E&G. Once corrected, the auxiliary surpluses dropped to roughly $7.6 million and $4.4 million in those 2 years, respectively, and overall those balances have been trending downward, not up. We agree that relying on auxiliaries is not sustainable, and we are already taking steps to structurally realign our E&G budget. We've reduced non-essential travel, tightened technology and operating costs, strengthened vacancy controls, and aligned resources more closely with enrollment trends. At the same time, our investments in enrollment and retention are paying off, with increases in undergraduate enrollment, which is essential for stabilizing revenue. We now have a comprehensive financial recovery plan in place that reduces our ongoing expense base while still allowing us to invest in initiatives that will drive enrollment and student success. And with more accurate accounting practices in place, we will ensure that E&G and AUGS revenue sources are properly allocated going forward. Our goal is long-term financial stability, and these steps put us on our path to success. Thank you very much, and I will stop here, and if there are any questions, we are happy to ask them.
Thank you so much, Madam President. Any questions? Thank you. I don't see any. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. We appreciate your time.
Yes, I believe that's the last budget hearing. The gavel is over there. That ends the budget hearing. Is there another one?